But I think the development of full artificial intelligence will spell the end of the human race.
It's a flying object, and we don't know what it is. I would hope somebody is checking it out.
It was a rocket or whatever, but incredibly fast, opposite direction. It was too fast to be an airplane.
I'm glad the Pentagon is looking at this, because if it poses a threat, I want them on top of it.
Well, the craft generates its own gravitational field.
So you said there's lights in the sky?
The internet has become the command center for criminals and terrorists.
911, what's your emergency? I need help, please help me!
Aliens won't let it happen. You know, that's what we're instructed to say.
Roswell, Area 51. Alien kept deep under the ground.
Self-serving. You're here for a reason. You're listening to Troubled Minds Radio.
Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest. Into the digital darkness. Good evening and welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and hello to all of you who may also have troubled minds. What's going on, guys? It is Thursday night, which is one of the nights we get together and talk about all the things we're not allowed to talk about. We do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific. What are those things, you may wonder? I'm going to have to sum up because there's way too many. Aliens, conspiracy, the paranormal, the government, academia, the 24-hour news cycle, propaganda, and the general feeling that we live in the upside down. Got a doozy for you tonight, per usual. And we're talking about resurrection. That's right. Actual, not de-extinction. We've talked about de-extinction before, sort of Jurassic Park style, that sort of thing. No. We're not talking about that. We're talking about actual human resurrection. That's what's on my mind tonight. We're going to get there in a little bit. It's complicated, right? Because, of course, there's a lot of things we got to talk about. How do you define actual death? And as technology advances and some things happen and maybe people pop up from being dead and they're not dead anymore, there's lots of things happening in the world today where it makes us probably have to look back and define what these things actually mean, what these terms mean. So to actually talk about human resurrection, we first have to define death. Oh, yes. Is that brain death? Is that body death? Is it consciousness death? Is it somewhere in between? And it's, as always, right? As always, it's complicated. It's complicated. And so, well, that's what we're talking about tonight because, of course, this is Troubled Minds after all, which means all that stuff we do talk about, it is, over here on the West Coast, it's almost dark, so we can say, talk about scary things, spooky things by dark of night. Well, in this case, almost dark, but, we got East Coasters and people listening all over the world. So, yeah, I mean, in some places it's dark. That's good enough for me. All right, so what we're going to do tonight, per usual, right? We're streaming on Rockfin, YouTube, DLive, and Twitter. And, of course, we're broadcasting live on the Fringe FM. And we're taking your phone calls, right? Because, as you know, the whole idea here is that this is just a conversation. Again, I added a little chat warning. Let me know if that little chat warning is popping up about the chat, guys. I had moderators in the YouTube chat. I removed every bit of censorship, so ridiculous comments should come through. If that becomes a problem, I'll change it. But go ahead. If we get people mixing it up and trying to be difficult, just ban them, or let me know, and I'll happily ban them. But just an FYI out there to the YouTube mods. Appreciate that. I thought we'd try and experiment and just remove all YouTube censorship and see what happens. So anyway, there we go. Please just mind your manners. Be nice to each other. I appreciate that very much. Okay, so what we're doing again is having that conversation. Okay, we're doing the conversation, and tonight it is about resurrection. It's not about de-extinction. It's about human resurrection. Okay, and like I said, it's complicated. We are streaming in all those places, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. Okay, not just regarding what death actually is defined by, but also what resurrection means. Because as I started looking into this, but of course scientifically, it's complicated. It's extremely complicated because there are so many ways to actually define what resurrection means, let alone what death itself even is. So, okay, so there's that. All right, we're going to get to that in just a minute here. But as I said, we're streaming on all those platforms: Rockfin, YouTube, DLive, and Twitter. Broadcasting live on the Fringe FM. I'm watching your chat in all the places. And like I always joke, I've got 8 or 9 tentacles and eyeballs at the end of every one. So I'm watching all the places and trying to incorporate your great ideas into the show tonight as we go. And that's the beauty of the show. It is unscripted. It's just sort of rough outlines, ideas, some articles, and the secret weapon of this show is you. It's always been you, because I'm just one person, and like a radio show, the whole deal, YouTube, Rockfin, on camera, and the whole thing, right? But still, it's just one person. Like I said, without you guys, I could be mumbling in the corner to myself, and that would be that, right? But you guys make this way more interesting and greater than the sum of its parts, like I said. So if you want to be part of the show tonight, I'd love to hear your thoughts. 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. We'll put you on the show, and it's as easy as that. You can also join the Discord at troubledminds.org. That would be, of course, the official website, troubledminds.org, and you can find the Discord link there. You can find the phone number. You can find all the social media. Everything else is there, and including the radio show for Fringe FM. All the links are there. And so, I think that covers it. That Discord, of course, is a chat client. It's a voice client. It's completely free. It's a way we share ideas. It's sort of a social media 2.5 or something. It's pretty good. You can actually type to each other like old school chat rooms. You can share photographs and links and YouTube videos, and use it like a telephone, or even share your screen or live stream your camera and all the rest of that. It's pretty amazing. If you guys haven't used it, come say hi. A lot of the people that are active on this show that are actually call in and contribute are very active on Discord as well. Come meet some of them, because they're more amazing in person. Actually, let's say offline, when it's just more free form and people talking to each other. So there you go. Troubledminds.org. Click the Discord link. A couple more things. Like I said, we are streaming live on the Fringe FM. That's digital radio. And what you can do is, help us there. Join the Fringe Discord at fringe.fm/chat. That will give you a direct invite to that Fringe Discord. It's the same program. It's just a different room, and I'm watching all that. Speaking of which, what's up, S Magician? I see you there, buddy. I see you there. What's up on over on Fringe? He says, hey, Michael, I've got a past life story to tell you. All right. That's cool. I'm down for that. 702-957-1037. All right. So that's what we're doing tonight. We're talking about that, and we're doing the thing. One final thing, and then we'll get going here. Regarding Fringe FM, also the easiest way to listen to Troubled Minds and Fringe in general is to just download the app. You can find it, of course, on the app stores, Apple, and, of course, Android. It's completely free, and it's the easiest way to listen to Troubled Minds and all the rest of the fantastic programming on the Fringe. Just download the app, and it's completely free. I mentioned that twice. The third time is worth mentioning. And just smash the play button on the Fringe app at 7 p.m. Pacific, Monday through Thursday. You get Troubled Minds, and then, of course, you get all the other amazing stuff that comes along with it, all the other programming and all the other time slots. All right, so let's do it. Let's get to this. What got me thinking in terms of all this crazy stuff? Human resurrection, right? Human resurrection. It's complicated. Hey, I'm talking here. It's complicated, all right? Now, let's go here. Let's start with Science Alert. ScienceAlert.com begins exactly like this. Now, this is a little bit wild, right? This is what got me thinking in terms of, definitions, because definitions seem to be hard depending on what you're talking about. But here we go. The headline from Science Alert: scientists have revived a glimmer of activity in human eyes after death. Uh-oh. Oh, no. Good thing I just changed my donor status. Check this out. May 12th, 2022. Scientists have momentarily restored a faint twinkle of life to dying cells in the human eye. In order to better understand the way nerve cells succumb to a lack of oxygen, a team of U.S. researchers measured activity in mouse and human retinal cells soon after death. Amazingly, with a few tweaks to the tissue's environment, they were able to revive the cell's ability to communicate hours later. When stimulated by light, the postmortem retinas were shown to emit specific electrical signals known as B waves. Oh, this should be fine, right? This should totally be fine. These waves, straight from the article here, are also seen in living retinas, and they indicate communication between all the layers of macular cells that allow us to see. Okay, yeah, this is fine. Let's see. It is the first time deceased human donor eyes have ever responded to light in this way, and it has some experts questioning the irreversible nature of death in the central nervous system. All right, like I said, death is just defining that term is complicated, right? What are we talking about? We're talking about brain death. We're talking about body death. We're talking about death of the central nervous system. What are we talking about? The worms crawl in, the worms crawl out. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And I think this is an interesting one because we talked about this in terms of, again, de-extinction and bringing back the woolly mammoth and, all the rest of that stuff. That's normal stuff, right? I mean, that's normal troubled mind stuff. But sort of that de-extinction or even the term resurrection certainly becomes a lot more sticky when you get to the point of humans, doesn't it? Because, of course, we have the souls, we have the consciousness, we have, whatever it is you believe exists, that twinkle of electricity that animates the meat suit. What does it mean? What exactly does it mean? And I think this is it's, as always, right, it's complicated. And complicated is fine by me because, of course, you know me, I'm not afraid of the big questions and afraid of, I think the thing that's interesting is I'm not afraid about not knowing the answer. I'm okay talking about this for hours tonight and finishing and learning a bunch of things from you guys and not ever coming to a conclusion. I think that's, like I say, this is the part of the actual great conversation anymore. And it's okay. It's okay to not have answers. It's okay to still continue seeking even after, right, the thing is done. So I don't know. In terms of this, as we start, creepy, right? So they've revived a glimmer of activity in human eyes after death. They've been able to pump oxygen in, and there's some other things that sort of would mimic the eyeball being part of the central nervous system and being able to sort of act like it's still attached, fool the eyeball even after death. Okay, and so what happens is the eyeball, when they shine lights on the thing, and it's dead, it responds to light. Okay, now this is creepy. This is super creepy because not just for the reasons of, well, what does dead mean? And we're talking about donor eyes, right? Donor eyes. I mean, oh boy, that's a little creepy. That's a little terrifying, right? So what does it mean? Like I said, how do we define? There's a lot of questions tonight as we go, right? And there's a lot of ways to actually tackle human resurrection. You're going to be shocked at some of these ways. I've never heard of a lot of this. And by the way, my name is Michael Strange, and I do this show called Troubled Minds where we talk about stuff like this all the damn time. But tonight, wow, I'm going to introduce you to some stuff, some actual resurrection stuff you probably have never even heard of. And that is pretty wild. So a few questions as we get going tonight, as usual, right? So number one, how do you find death? Define death. How do we define death itself, all right? Is it consciousness death? Is it brain death? Is it body death? Is it central nervous system death? Is it a combination of all of those things? What's up, Lily in the chat says, cremate me. Yeah, right. Like don't peel apart my live body parts, or let's say only mostly dead. You guys know the Princess Bride? Yeah, don't peel apart my mostly dead live body parts and distribute them to the masses, please. Let's not do that. So the first question is, what is death? All right. How do we define it? It depends, right? It depends on who you ask. There are different ways to define that, different ways to look at it. There's people they consider brain dead that have in the past just woke up. It's been like, yo, what's up? Or been brain dead and they found a way to stimulate it recently. Remember, you guys heard about this one. Just happened mere weeks ago, where they were able to actually communicate with this guy that they thought was brain dead. And they were able to get him to communicate through some sort of a computer program or something or other. And he said hello. And the first thing he asked for was a cold beer. Right? So, hey, the humor persists in the brain dead people, right? I don't know. I think I'm exaggerating there. It wasn't total brain death, but it was some sort of I'll pull up that article. We'll find it. But in any case, right? So how do you define it? It's complicated. It's, as always, everything in life is not super easy. It's complicated, right? But okay, so there's that. So number one, how do we define what death actually is, all right? And then number two, are we ready for what's known as human resurrection, okay? Meaning that, let's say just scientifically, let's say we're not talking voodoo magic or what's up, Satan's in the chat, or Satan bringing you back for nefarious purposes. We're talking about, let's just say, regular science, okay? Let's say through the way of regular scientific discovery that they realize that dead isn't actually dead. It's more the idea of Princess Bride dead. He's only mostly dead, right? And so, which is funny because the punchline of the joke is unless he's fully dead, then the only thing you can do is check his pockets for loose change, right? It's Billy Crystal and of course the great stuff from the great Princess Bride. If you guys have seen that movie, it's an oldie but a goodie. But okay, so the second thing becomes, so first, how do we define death? Number two, what about human resurrection? Do you think we're ready for this, scientifically speaking? I mean, if you want to get into like weird occult rituals and stuff, because we've been known to do that from time to time, discussion wise, not actually doing that stuff. But what do you think? What do you think this is, and where are we? Are we ready for this? And you tell me. So one more time, as we get into this, I'll introduce some of these ideas that maybe you haven't heard of regarding what actual resurrection might be, not just now, but in the near future. So 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. We'll put you on the show. It's as simple as that. One more time, click the Discord link at troubleminds.org. Let's get back to this article and just finish this up and get a little bit better idea of what's actually happening here. Back to Science Alert. Scientists have revived a glimmer of activity in human eyes after death, right? So here we go. This is learning how select tissues in the nervous system cope with loss of oxygen could teach us a thing or two about recovering lost brain functions, all right? Let's see, I said that. Researchers have had some luck already. In 2018, researchers at Yale University made headlines when they kept pig brains alive for as long as 36 hours after death. 4 hours post-mortem, they were even able to revive a small response, though nothing organized or global that could be measured by an electroencephalogram. I said it, big word. The feats were achieved by stalling the rapid degradation of mammalian neurons using artificial blood, heaters, and pumps to restore circulation of oxygen and nutrients. A similar technique now appears possible in mice and human eyes, which is the only extruding part of the nervous system. And this is where things start to get super creepy, right? Quote, "We were able to make the retinal cells talk to each other the way they do in the living eye to mediate human vision," says visual scientist Franz Vinberg from the University of Utah. Continues the quote here, "Past studies have restored very limited electrical activity in organ donor eyes, but this has never been achieved in the macula, and never to the extent we have now demonstrated. Initially, the experiments showed retinal cells continued to react to light for up to 5 hours after death. Yet, the crucial intercellular B-wave signals quickly dropped off, apparently due to the loss of oxygen." All right, well, well, that's not creepy at all, right? That's fine. This is fine. How are you feeling about this so far? Are you guys okay with resurrection? What about the fact that maybe these eyeballs from the donors, maybe these eyeballs are not actually dead at all? maybe there's something left inside of them that's still fighting for life, and we don't know how to quantify that. But crazy enough, these eyeballs were responding to light, and they mimicked them with fake blood and oxygen, and made the eyeball think it was still attached, right? Still part of a living central nervous system, and well, that's when things get super creepy. So there we go. There's the first thing that's on my mind tonight. There's lots of things we can look into regarding this. There's papers here regarding neuronal survival in the brain, the different types of specific mechanisms in mammals and brain procedures and all kinds of stuff, right? There's scientific papers galore on this because, of course, right? We've talked about this in the past with Jeff Bezos and the billionaire class, or as some people say, the predator class. Shout out to whoever said that. I can't remember. That was somebody recently over on Twitch. But yeah, the predator class, let's say. But okay, so if they're actually creating these laboratories deep underground for immortality, right? Wouldn't that count as a sort of resurrection sort of situation as well? Like if cryogenics, where if people pass away, what they'll do is they'll freeze them right at the point of death, and expect sometime in the future they'll be able to bring them back. So is that would that be resurrection? Would that be not? Would that be cheating? What exactly is that? We'll get into that. And by the way, if you're into that, I found a place just for you. I found the place for you because there's a place where you can actually get that done. So I'll be able to point you guys in the right direction if you're into cryogenics and maybe dying or not dying. I mean, don't be into dying, but I mean, let's say dying but not dying. You know what I mean? Wink, wink. When the time comes, they just freeze you up and slap you in the fridge, and then Vanilla Sky style, just bring you back, well, when technology allows. Creepy, so creepy, all these thoughts. But okay, so that's where we begin, right? A nice article to start. We'll get into zombies, we'll get into other stuff tonight, because if we don't, like I said, who's going to? So those are the questions. What do you guys think regarding this? Number one, the first question is, how do we define death? Is it death of the brain, death of the mind, death of the consciousness? Is it death of the body? Is it death of the central nervous system? Is it a combination of one or all of those things? What do you think? All right. And then two, are we ready for something like this, human resurrection, including, well, let's say that death no longer is, well, viable because we can just, hook you back up to some, jumper cables and blam, hit the electricity, and magically, or not magically, let's say scientifically, because of course Arthur C. Clarke and magic and a sufficiently advanced actual technology is going to be indistinguishable from each other. So let's say magic, but it's scientific magic, all right? So that's the question, right? Apox got it right. Brain dead isn't brain dead anymore, because it used to be. The definitions have changed, right? We'll get into some pretty interesting stuff regarding resuscitation as well. So if we don't get there, or if it takes me too long, just remind me in the chat, guys. We'll get to resuscitation and how these definitions of what dead means actually changes. Exactly. What's up, MJ Frankenstein? And so that's what's on my mind tonight. Again, what are the definitions? What about death? Do you think that we are actually ready for human resurrection? Meaning that we can just overcome whatever cellular death happens to be and just, like I said, hook you up to some sort of voodoo machine and fire up the electrical whatevers and Frankenstein yourself. So, yeah, you tell me. Yeah, right, the background. You guys like the zombie background? Yeah, so that's what's going on tonight. That's what's on my mind. I thought this was a pretty fascinating article. When I found this today, I'm like, that's it. That's what we're doing today. That's absolutely what we're doing today, because we haven't talked about this in terms of actual resurrection for a very long time. De-extinction is one thing. Bring it back to woolly mammoth, the dodo bird, all the rest of that. We talked about that not too long ago. And even in let's say 4 or 5 months ago, we talked about it directly as well. But it becomes, let's say, a lot more complicated when you start talking in terms of resurrecting actual people. So there we go. That probably lines us up and gets us to exactly where we need to be. I see you guys in the chat. I hope everybody's doing well. Happy Thursday, which of course is a Troubled Minds Friday, because there's no Troubled Minds show tomorrow. We go Monday through Thursday, 7 p.m. Pacific, did I mention? But as we do this and as we wind down to the bottom of the hour, that's what's on my mind. A few definitions. What exactly does being dead mean? Is it body death? Is it mind death? Consciousness death? Nervous system death? Some combination or all of the above? What if we misdiagnose death and you're only mostly dead? Does that count as resurrection? And then 2, the other question, are we ready for human resurrection? 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. This is Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Don't go anywhere. More human resurrection, definitions of death, and more. Your calls when we return. Be right back. Don't go anywhere. And yes, tomorrow is Friday the 13th. What's up, Nice Bucker? Be right back. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and we are streaming on Rockfin, YouTube, D-Live, and Twitter, and we are broadcasting live on the Fringe FM. Tonight, we're taking your calls as we discuss the idea of human resurrection. First things first, how do we define death? Is it death of the brain, death of the consciousness, death of the central nervous system or the body itself? How do we define that? And then number 2, if we could break that spell, the old spell of death, is it possible that we're ready currently for human resurrection? Love to hear your thoughts. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. Now, there's a whole lot of stuff, like we got Satan in the chat, and, clearly and obviously, that's not the real Satan. I'm sorry. Sorry, Satan. I don't mean to undermine your Satanness. But we got Satan in the chat there, and Satan says that the original, again, here's the blasphemy for you, so you guys get ready for this. Buckle your safety belts. But said, Satan in the chat said the original zombie was Jesus. All right? And I was like, yeah, that's a little bit, that's a messed up thing to say, man. How could you? And then I went and repeated it. But anyway, right, more for effect, because actually, in terms of that type of stuff, it was not actually Jesus at all, was it? Everybody's familiar with the, of course, the resurrection of Jesus, and with a contemporary religion like this, it's really difficult to sort of line it up into, let's say, mythology, right? Because people still practice this stuff, and I don't mean it in a bad way. I just mean it in sort of, like I said, I'm agnostic in all ways. And I'm not trying to offend anybody, so please don't take it that way, because I'm using that as a reference and a springboard to take us a little further back, because you can actually go back thousands of years prior to Jesus and the time of Jesus, and you can get to, actually, that's right, a resurrection that was quite a bit sooner than that. And of course, it's as you guys have heard of this is again from Live Science, and listen to this, and you'll love this. Listen, close your eyes and go with me on a journey, and it reads a little something like this. Ancient accounts tell of an important figure whose birth would be heralded by a star in the heavens, a god who would later judge the dead. He would be murdered in betrayal by one close to him, his body hidden away, though not for long, and he would return in a miraculous resurrection to begin an eternal reign in heaven. And does that sound familiar? How familiar does that sound? Okay, well, it's not what you think. To his legion of followers, he and his resurrection came to symbolize the promise of eternal life. And you got it. The figure, not who you think it is, Osiris, was the supreme god in ancient Egypt, only one of many pagan gods worshipped thousands of years before the birth of Jesus. Indeed, though Jesus is currently the best-known example of a resurrected figure, he is far from the only one. And now, right, you sort of look at that, and things are framed in a particular way. Right? So what does that mean? So we've been talking about sort of in mythology, folklore, and the rest of that for a very, very long time, about not just death and life, of course, because that's part of life is part of death and vice versa and all the rest of that, but the mysteries of those things. And then not only as such, the notion of actual resurrection. And so, you see what I'm saying here. This is not a new theme. This is again the Philosopher's Stone. This is the idea of the Fountain of Youth. This is the idea of not just resurrection, but the notion of course, through resurrection, eternal life. So, what does that mean? What exactly does that mean? Do you think it's related? I'm not so sure it's related. But, so back to the definitions. Love to hear your thoughts on this, guys. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubleminds.org. Now, look, regarding death, okay, how do we define it? Back to the idea of course, death in terms of whatever that happens to be, of what kind of death, right? That becomes the issue here. How do we actually define these things? And then to define them, you clearly have to be able to say, well, this is the definition and this is what resurrection means, right? How do we come back from that? Well, I don't know. I think it's complicated. Per usual, right? These things are not easy things to discuss and think about because it's complicated, all right? We'll get into, again, a lot of stuff tonight. We'll talk a little bit about Osiris, of course, and thousands of years ago, and the idea of a resurrected, let's say, God that came back to rule the heavens and promise eternal life to their followers, right? That's Osiris. But it is the parallels are nice. The parallels are definitely nice, but in modern terms, in scientific terms, there's a paper here. There's an individual. Stop me if you heard this guy. His name is. Let's see. What is this guy's name? His name is Alexei Turchin, Turchin, okay? And he actually wrote an entire huge paper on this. You can find this at academia.edu, and I'm going to put this up on the screen. And he's actually talking about exactly this. He's got a ridiculous big chart here regarding all the different ways people can be resurrected. And we're talking about everything from the Kardashev 3-4-5 scales. We're talking about new physics. We're talking about cryonics, of course, plastination, if you've heard of that, digital immortality, restoration based on recordings, or a restoration in the form of a digital backup. I mean, there's a lot of, it starts to get super complicated, right? Use of quantum immortality. What about partial resurrection? Yeah. Things start to get weird, okay? So we're going to get in his paper and the rest of this too, but how would you define this? Number one, probably the most pressing question tonight is, do you think we're actually ready as a society, as a human race, for human resurrection? You think it's going to happen? There's 33 people listening on YouTube. Is that what we were trying to say? Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so that's what's on my mind. Are we ready for this? To me, I'm not so sure that we're ready for this, right? Again, I'm just going to give you my take because we got some shy people out there that don't want to give us their take just yet. But I think my take on this is this is scary. The implications here are pretty stiff in that, of course, meaning that you cannot simply just actually do a resurrection and be fine with that, right? Like just click the button and you get your resurrection and that's that. It's quite a bit more complicated in what it means, because again, does it bring you back in full? Does it bring you back in partial terms of let's say a fractured consciousness or a broken body, or both, right? Or some combination of the two, or again like a central nervous system that is not quite I don't know. Like I said, it's very complicated. To me, I don't think we're ready. I don't think we're ready for this because there are a lot of implications, including, right? Like, okay, so let's say that somebody passes away and we have the ability to bring them back. All right. Reading a lot about this tonight because, of course, doing what I do and figure some things out, get some good questions, some good ideas. And so what if you do pass away, or somebody you know passes away? Let's say they're in, copy that, Derek, I got you. So what about this? What if you're actually, somebody passes away, but they're in prison, right? They're in prison, okay? So if they pass away in prison and then you bring them back, what happens to their prison sentence? So are they a new person, definition-wise, right? They've been declared legally dead and therefore carried out their prison term until death, right? Till it's over. Well, what happens when you hook up the jumper cables and then put life back into this person? So does that actually sort of execute, wink, wink, their sentence, pardon my poor choice of words, and put it to bed, and now they're free when they bring them back? Is that a thing? How about what if you have legal obligations, or you have child support, things like this, right? When you bring you back, do those things actually persist? Or are you the same person? Or are you a new person? Is it somewhere in between? Things get sloppy, right? So in those terms, right, you might think that people will get, let's say, get sneaky, trying to get around the rules, right? You see what I'm saying? So not meaning that well, you know what I mean. I'm not going to say it, but people get sneaky, right, with loopholes and things like this. So what kind of actual, like, you know, what does it mean? I don't know. What does this mean? I think that's the craziest part here. So love to hear your thoughts. I'll get into this. Let's get into this guy's chart here. So again, Osiris, we're talking about resurrection, and there's some really good stuff here. There you go. Matt's got a great point. He says, what about marriage? Till death do us part. Exactly, right? So does that mean the first time you die? Or does that mean the second time you die? Or does that mean the third time you die? I mean, if they could keep bringing you back, right? Like suddenly, like these sorts of, and I know it seems silly to kind of put this in terms of like stupid papers and legal definitions and whatnot, but it certainly starts to throw that type of sort of a spanner in the works, if you know what I mean, because people are devious, and they will pull whatever kind of shenanigans they can. And if, well, often yourself, for instance, to come back as another actually person that's not yourself, but let's say you're Michael Strange B, is that the same Michael Strange A that was, well, doing the other stuff, that whatever was going on? You see what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm going to stay away from that because that's a little dark, but you get what I mean, right? So how do we define this? Number one, how do we define death? Again, is it central nervous system? Is it consciousness death? Is it brain death? Is it body death? Some combination of all the above. Or the next thing, are we ready for whatever this human resurrection happens to be? 702-957-1037. Let's go to Joseph in Iowa. What's going on, my friend? How are you tonight? Welcome to Troubled Minds.
Hey, I was thinking like it would be kind of like a possibility. You were saying like debt collectors could possibly spark this resurrection thing. Like people start are like they have the technology that would be kind of, I don't know, funny and dark at the same time, but like resurrect people, and then like, oh yeah, like in 2012 you pulled out that student loan and we're going to need that.
That's super dark. This sounds like a Philip K. Dick book already. No, and you're right. And this is the type of thing. And you're bringing in this into account of what if you don't want to be brought back? And your debt collectors want you back. I love it. I love it. I love where your mind's at, my friend. Dark and twisted, as it should be with Troubled Minds. No, so that's a fantastic point. And again, what about the definitions of when you come back? Are you the same as when you went, right? Are all of those legal things still binding? Again, like Matt said in the chat, till death do you part in your marriage. Are you free? You know what I mean? I don't know. That's pretty amazing thought there. What about the rest of this? Unless you got more, go ahead and go with that thought, because that's amazing.
I don't really have more on that thought. I have another thought. Sure. Of like making people live longer.
Sure, go ahead.
Like big tech data, and that would just be because I had the idea just the other day. Because I vaporize. I use like a vapor for nicotine, and like it wasn't working when I needed it. So then I was thinking, wow, like if they could like predict when you need it, which would probably be easy for them. Like, you know, like after you could predict the simple things, like after you eat food, like you want it. And like, there's like certain things, like if they used all the data just for like nicotine addiction, which is the strongest addiction, they say, like, I guarantee if you go to like, if you counteract almost like a dog shock collar, but like you're not getting any pain, you're just not getting any satisfaction. So it's not working for you. So your brain's like, okay, this isn't working for me, you know, at this point in time. So it'll make it easier for you. And like little stuff like that, like you can critique that into a lot of things in your life. And if they do that from the beginning, then I think they can kind of make you better off living longer. And you would definitely want to not be ruining your body if like you live longer anyway. You don't want to be in pain and stuff. So you want to be a healthy person.
Yeah, so then the whole consent thing comes in. Do you want to come back or not? Like Susan said in the chat, don't bring me back. My body's broken. Well, I mean, I think in those terms, I think they'd probably be able to fix your body. I mean, we're talking about sort of a sci-fi technology here. But over on this is super funny to add to what you were saying there, Joseph. That Cubes over on Rockfin said, "LOL, the government will bring us back for more taxes." Right? And that seems to be sort of a weird spot, right? You want to come back just to pay more taxes to your government, Joseph?
Or keep us alive so we pay out more, because like we're more valuable alive than dead,
Yeah, I think that's
so
definitely.
That's saying if they can't like bring us back, but like, or like that's just like a different, living longer is just kind of different, I guess. Or living forever. I mean, why would you need to respawn if you live forever, though?
Yeah, you got the cheat code. You don't even need the respawn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question.
And then there's like the theory. There's just like a theory like that maybe we are just re-experiencing through every body. We're like one entity re-experiencing through every body. So like, why would you want one to live forever? Then it would be like having someone on an Apple computer from like the first Apple computer. Now everyone else is on these like little laptops going around with 5G signals in their laptops and stuff, and someone's still got a box computer. I don't know.
It certainly becomes complicated, doesn't it? So how about this then? How do we define what actual death means? That certainly starts to again with this idea that these eyeballs from the Science Alert article here where we started, they're able to revive a glimmer of activity in human eyes after death. So do you think that the definition of death itself is always changing? That's the terrifying part, right? Meaning that we're probably cutting people up and divvying out their body parts before they're actually totally gone, right? How do we define this? It's pretty terrifying, right?
I would be hard to like test that, right? And they would almost have to find that, like, what do you call it? Like, if they were able to test that, then they would be able to like really get in deep into consciousness. Like we'd start understanding a lot more than a lot, But I do think we need to do things differently, though. Like, we have a lot of options, though. We have cremation. Like, you can literally go to like the Himalayas and get fed to birds if you want to. Like, you can do all kinds. I mean, it takes money, but I mean, or you could just, I don't know. There has to be like a correct way, right? Or is there not an incorrect way to deal with like a dead person?
It's a hell of a question, and I think you could ask a million people and get a million different answers, and that's what's so fascinating about this. I mean, in those terms, if you can do that, right? Let's say it just costs money. What about the idea of cryogenics and being able to, let's say, freeze you at the moment of your death, and then bring you back? I don't know, 500 years in the future, right? You've seen Vanilla Sky, haven't you?
Yeah, I haven't seen Vanilla Sky, but I've seen a lot on that. Like the Disney guy is supposedly in cryo and stuff, but I think like with the amount of scanning technology, I think we could just map everything and then get the data off of ourselves and do it without a body. And then like in the future, they would recreate your brain based off of years of like whatever scans they do. I don't know how they would do it. You'd probably have to wear a helmet every day.
Yeah, or worse. Yeah, we're going to talk about the different ways of actual resurrection, but not just that. Regarding bringing you back, sort of in the meat suit, in the same meat suit. But what about? I mean, we can kind of toss into the conversation. What about saving your consciousness? And we talk about this often. Sort of just replugging you into an R2D2 or some sort of a Elon Musk robot, where you're now superhuman in strength, but you still have your own consciousness and retain the same subjective experience that you had while you were alive. I mean, there's a whole lot of really weird stuff that kind of goes with this, and the idea of resurrection, right? Resurrection as immortality. There's a lot of different really complicated ways here, including, we'll get to one that will probably blow your mind, about Dyson spheres, which if you haven't heard that one, that's a pretty wild theory. We'll get to that as well tonight. But what else you got for us, Joseph, regarding that? So do you think humanity is actually ready for human resurrection? Or are we there yet, just sort of to get over the shock factor? Because in some terms, like, it's like got the zombies behind me in the background here, we would have a society of zombies, right? People that have passed and have come back. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah, and I'm sure some of them would actually be zombies at this point too, because like living longer, I mean, I couldn't imagine, like, I definitely need a reboot back to, like, a reset. Need like a clean slate, because like if you keep, it's just like, like the wear and tear of like the brain and stuff. And like if you just keep adding, I'm pretty young, but like I can just imagine, like, I already forget stuff, and I would basically be a robot at that point.
Yeah, right.
Throw me in the labor force.
Yeah, well, and I think that's where it starts to become a little scary, right? So if we're resurrected, are we actually what we were, or are we less of what we were? Have we left a piece of our soul somewhere else, right, and came back without it? I think like some of those metaphysical type of soul questions and implications really fall into this, because what do you leave when you pass over and you come back? This idea of near-death experiences and whatnot. There's a lot to this. This gets super complicated, right? And that's why we talk about it. But yeah, got a minute or two left. What's your final thought here?
Yeah, maybe it's best just let nature do it. Maybe I like to think, like, if we can measure this stuff, they might be able to figure out we're resurrecting all the time based off of data and stuff or whatever. Maybe.
Yes, like, that's another one.
How they can prove that.
That's another one. Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I think, like I said, defining these terms is a kind of a slippery fish at this point, because, it used to be that when people had that partial death experience, like if they drowned, right, but we're still sort of in between and could be resuscitated through compressions in their chest and like blowing air in their down into their lungs, where they spit the water up and they come back from the dead. They used to think that was a resurrection in and of itself. Come to find out, well, it's just science, and they weren't actually dead yet. Back to the Princess Bride, they were only mostly dead, which seems super dark. I believe
that the government does this though to some people though. Like, you'll actually die. Like, let's say like a kid dies doing something stupid, and the government here, like, they get that alert, and like they will pull a cold case and resurrect them just to see how they do in society, maybe. Like, that could be a thing. Yeah, you'd have to do the experiments first to find out that if they could get back to work and pay their taxes, right? I mean, otherwise you don't want to bring them back. Joseph, you're the best. Yeah. You're the best, brother. So we're still talking about this tonight. Joseph here, a good friend of mine, good friend of the show's. He's got a YouTube channel called IO Walks. He does original music and some other stuff. Talented dude. He live streams. I popped into some of his streams there, and he's a talented guy. Go check him out. Joseph, you're the best. I appreciate you calling in. Thanks for listening. Always a pleasure. Yeah, thank you. Have a fantastic night. Simple as that. 702-957-1037. We're talking about the idea of human resurrection. How
how ready are we? And how do you define death? Of course, is this the death of the mind, the death of the consciousness, the death of the meat suit, the death of the central nervous system, the death of something else? And of course, what happens if you get brought back? Do you leave something, let's say, on the other side? I don't know. I wish I had the answers to these questions. I do not. This is just a discussion and food for thought. And are we ready for this? I've got some other wild ideas for you tonight as we continue trucking, talking about human resurrection. How ready are we? 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. Don't go anywhere. More Troubled Minds on the way. I'm Michael Strange, and we'll be right back with Derek the Night Stalker. And, of course, we've got James of Salcedo Paranormal and your calls as well. Be right back. Don't go anywhere. More Troubled Minds on the way. We are talking about the alien abduction phenomenon.
The aliens are looking through your eyes and they're accessing your optic nerve. And through that optic nerve, they're transferring to your brain. Random images does traverse neurons in the brain.
Alright, so
and they also feel them planting or receiving memories, or ideas, or images.
Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest into the digital darkness. Yo ho, yo ho. Welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and hello to all of you who may also have troubled minds. What's going on, guys? It's Thursday night, which is one of the nights we get together and talk about all the things we're not allowed to talk about. You know what those things are. We do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific. And those things are aliens, conspiracy, the paranormal, the government, academia, the 24-hour news cycle, propaganda, and the general feeling that we live in the upside down. Thanks, Fred. Copy that. And so what we're talking about tonight is this idea here, this idea of human resurrection. Of course, how ready are we? How do we define death? What does it mean? The death of the actual nervous system, the death of the, let's say, the brain, the death of the body, the death of the consciousness. I mean, it's complicated, right? Because, of course, if you look at resuscitation and the rest of that, like I said, when people used to drown, they think they were dead. Well, but they weren't fully dead. They were only mostly dead, right? And they didn't do anything to help them. But you could actually, pump on their chest and blow some wind down their windpipe and in their lungs, and they would be able to bring them back. They would, miraculously cough up water, and it would be a miracle, right? It would be a super miracle. Well, in this case, we're talking about not just a changing definition of death, which is a terrifying notion. We're talking about, are we ready for human resurrection? And that's what's on my mind tonight. If you want to be part of the show, 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. We'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. We are streaming on Rockfin, YouTube, DLive, and Twitter. And, of course, we're broadcasting live on the Fringe FM and taking your calls. So what are your thoughts on this? Let's do it. Let's go to Derek in Massachusetts, the Night Stalker. What's up, my friend? Welcome to Troubled Minds. How are you tonight?
Hey, Mike. Great show tonight.
Thank you very much. What do you think about definitions and the rest of this? We got slippery slopes. How terrified are you talking about this stuff?
Yeah, I'm pretty terrified for sure. I'm going to start with the maybe positive angle, maybe like the science angle first before I dip into the occult.
Sure.
Or actually, let me let me switch it up a little bit. So you mentioned the Osiris story, and Osiris is not the only figure in religion that's been, or mythology that's been resurrected, especially like in the spring, especially around, like the Jesus isn't the only figure here. So a lot of people remember the movie Zeitgeist that kind of came out around like maybe 08, 09, and that really broke it down a lot. I have a quick list here though. So we got Osiris, we got Horus, an Egyptian, Ethiopian, Sudanese. He was said to be crucified, and he died and resurrected 3,000 years before Jesus. This is just according to this first list. I'm not sure if this is all accurate. Buddha was an Indian god. He was said to have been crucified, died, and resurrected 600 years, which I'm not sure that's true. Krishna is an Indian god. He said to have been crucified, died, and resurrected 900 years ago. Zarathustra is an Iranian god. Same thing happened, but 1,000 years before. Mithra, I know for a fact, died. I don't think was crucified. Dionysus, the same thing. Orpheus, the same thing. Thammuz is a Babylonian god, 2,000 years before Jesus. Hermes, Adonis, and then obviously Jesus. So it happens a lot. So obviously, one possible explanation for it is it's an analogy to the sun. It's like a metaphor to the sun going down around the solstice and stuff. It seems that the sun kind of dies and comes back 3 days later. So, but also a lot of these secret societies, their initiation ritual is some type of resurrection ritual. So, like maybe like 5 years ago, I went to this Freddie Silva like lecture thing in New Hampshire, and I thought it was gonna be like a big lecture. So I show up, like I drive to New Hampshire, and it ends up being at the person's like living room. So I walk in, and I'm 20 years younger than everybody else. I absolutely reek of weed probably, and I walk into this person's living room, and then basically the whole lecture is just going from kind of ancient site to ancient site, how a lot of these initiation rites to get into these shamanic priest class or secret societies, et cetera, throughout time have been resurrection based. Like he calls the presentation the art of the resurrection, where these people, these like the priest class or people in secret societies, whoever, they either go into like a grotto or a cave or something to represent the underworld, or there could be in more extreme cases some type of actual physical death, like facsimile, or an actual type of drowning scenario where you do die for a little bit and come back, or some type of ego death scenario. But when you come back, you're supposed to be a more enlightened being. You're supposed to come back with knowledge, So that's where it gets interesting. That's where the science thing kind of pulls in. On the Ash show, sorry, I'm rambling real bad because I'm crazy busy tonight. But on the Ash episode about talking about aliens and stuff, at one point I mentioned that that thought experiment that Gordon White said a few years ago about how what would happen to a society if they were able to contact the dead for like 100 years, 1,000 years, or 1,000,000 years. What would that do to that society? So the idea being, if we go to an underworld, if this death and resurrection in this case is our soul or whatever we are going somewhere and coming back, will we acquire information from that process? Like, will science try to do? I think they're probably doing it already. There's that show, the OA, where that guy has kidnapping all these people and like drowning them and like hooking them up to all these machines to kind of like map what they're seeing on this, like during their near-death experience, to kind of see if there's any commonalities and decipher information. And he picked up in this fictional story, he got all kinds of information from it. He got sounds from Saturn and all kinds of weird stuff, So what would happen as a society if we start to communicate with the other side, with the afterlife, or we start to pick up this knowledge and bring it back in a scientific way? Like, will it advance our society? Will knowledge of the afterlife help us? Will different religions stop battling and stuff? Save me, I'm rambling, but what do you think about that?
No, you're good. I think that that whole type of thing is exactly where we're at. As said, there's some great occult stuff here. There's some stuff that's in sci-fi. And it seems to suggest not just like you said, sort of the cyclical sun thing. The sun goes down, it's reborn in the morning type of thing, but also something deeper, right? Something deeper in the sense of, as always, true troubled mind style. where we came from and where we're going, right? The idea of souls. And like I said, it's complicated. These definitions, once you start to dig in and wonder what the hell's really happening, the stuff is complicated, man. And
very complicated.
And you know, like it's in school terms, we're like, death is death. That's that. It's a wrap. But what exactly does it mean? It's creepy. It's creepy to think that it's changed, and not only is it changing, like you said, resuscitated from a drowning, kind of coming back to that ego death or whatever it is, you come back stronger. Well, what if they didn't resuscitate you and they just thought you were dead? Well, then you would be dead. So I mean, like as the definitions change, it becomes more terrifying to me, and that was the thing to me that was like, ooh, and these eyeballs coming back to life, sort of, right? That's
exactly. Yeah.
Good Lord. Yeah. So put you back on track.
So what does that mean? Like what is death? Are we gonna keep making the line between life and death murkier and murkier and murkier? Are we gonna figure out that there is some type of tether to your physical body after, like, there might not be any time span or any time duration like. You might be able to do it outside of just resuscitating immediately. Like, they might figure this thing out, like you're saying, find this glow in a person's eyes or whatever, and track down their soul and pull it back in potentially. And then, well, how would that person experience that? Would they just say, hypothetically, somebody's driving in a car and all of a sudden they experience a car crash? Will they just instantly wake up on an operating table or something? Will they have any memory at all of what they experience in the afterlife? And the longer they're on the other side, do they get more information? Do they travel farther down the river Styx, and do they figure out more stuff? In which case, if they bring that information back, that could be pretty valuable. It's obviously really creepy, but that's essentially the commonality between every secret society, every shamanic school, every priest type school, every initiatory rite is involved with some type of going to the underworld, communing with things, picking up knowledge, and then bringing it back and trying to convey that knowledge and use that knowledge for whatever, to make you better. And a lot of times in different darker, or ones that are more to actually acquire power, you go down to the underworld, and when you come back, you're like reborn as a new being. Like, you're reborn as this more like a shining one in some instances, or you're reborn as like a god form, or you're reborn like in Dionysus and Orphic mythologies, you're reborn with an entity inside of you. So that's if you want to go scary angle, when your soul leaves your body, hypothetically, if they can bring you back, do you come back alone? Or, I don't know, or like you're saying, are they just going to wake up your meat suit? Are you going to even be in there afterwards? And then is it going to be some kind of like zombie scenario, or something going to pose as you and like hop into your body during this resurrection process, and like we're going to have some type of mass entity invasion based on this resurrection process? I'm not really sure, but it's all over the place. If you're one of those types that like are into breaking down the Super Bowl, or breaking down these crazy Grammy events, or breaking down these mass rituals and stuff, a lot of the times it's based around the idea of resurrection and rebirth, and that's the whole Phoenix, which is the basis of the Great Seal, American Great Seal, which is actually a phoenix. It's not an eagle. It's all resurrection, going into the underworld, coming back with knowledge. So pretty scary stuff. I mean, that's the plot of Moon Knight. And when he's resurrected, he comes back like locked in a relationship with an Egyptian deity that's like basically making him do bad stuff. So who knows what you'll count down there. But on the positive tip, it might be cool to, as a society, if we figure out stuff about the afterlife. I'm rambling real bad, but does that make sense? Is that
no? It makes perfect sense.
A cohesive thought. Okay,
yeah.
Right.
So like Joseph was saying too. He was saying like, wouldn't it be, you'd have to do some sort of experiments with this to like set people loose in the wild and see if they were actually themselves again, right? Like, you would have to be able to sort of do this and find out what the limits of this resurrection, let's say, cycle would be. And then on the other side, like you're describing, the interesting part here to me is, well, if the longer you're out, what do you remember? Are you bringing back, like you said, from the river Styx, some, let's say, ancient knowledge that's, well, people aren't supposed to know? So, of course, what they're going to do, and this is where this gets really sick, because they want to find out the edges of this technology, whatever this happens to be, is they're going to let you stay dead and rot for as long as possible and test the very ends of this technology to see if you come back like enlightened and rotted like a zombie. I mean,
exactly. I mean, this that's exactly right. And it gets scary like that. I mean, if you want to go conspiratorial, I have zero proof of this, obviously, but I can't imagine in some MK Ultra style lab somewhere they aren't doing this. I mean, like, this seems like an experiment that they would want to do. Even who's to say that they wouldn't put it past death row inmates? All right, we're gonna kill you anyways, but let's try this experiment where we try to bring you back, and if it works, you can come back. You know, if not, you're gonna die anyways. Who cares? You know, or something to that effect. Like the OA had it where there was just mad scientists in his basement just drowning people, and just the information they got, like it was trippy. And I think that type of stuff. I mean, if we can think it, they're thinking it, and their morality, I don't think is up to where ours is. So they're probably doing it, I would imagine. But this also gets, I'm going to leave like up to like right now, but this gets into like necromancy and the idea of how good could they possibly get at this? Like Hellboy, in the Hellboy movies, when he needs answers from something, he'll like do a spell or incantation or whatever and resurrect just some body from some graveyard who's willing to talk to get information, and then they just let him die again, you know? So at a certain level, we're going to get to like a part where an entire society full of necromancers, and the line between life and death is gone. You know, what happens to us? What happens to us after 100 years? What happens to us after 1,000 years? Like, will we eventually leave our bodies from that? Are we ready for that type of stuff? Who's to say? I don't know. In simple terms, maybe yes. Maybe if we figure out which religion is the most accurate, it might stop some fights. Who's to say? But yeah. Sorry for rambling. I'm just really distracted. But great show, Mike. Awesome stuff.
You're good. On the money as always. You're the best, bro. I appreciate you dipping in. Your busy night at work and everything. Derek here, good friend of mine, good friend of the show. Go ahead.
If anyone's interested, I'll be on Ryan Gable's show tonight, talking about Doctor Strange and all kinds of esoteric weirdness. Pre-recorded from earlier today. So after Joe and after your show's over and stuff, I'll be on there.
Gotcha. Right on. So tonight, exactly at, have a good one, Derek, at 11 p.m. Pacific time, that will be The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable. You'll get the Night Stalker on there as well, talking about Doctor Strange. All right, so good stuff. Please give him a follow. Derek, as you guys know, a brilliant dude, good friend of mine. Link is in the description. He's got a YouTube channel. He's got one video. It's a trailer. He's got himself stalking at the grocery store. Yes, it's a stalker, Stocker, and you'll see him doing his magic in the grocery store. But he's way more brilliant than just the best Night Stalker in all the universe. He's also a brilliant dude, and let's inspire him to create more content by following his YouTube channel. We're talking about human resurrection. How ready are we? What are the definitions? What about the slippery slope of what death actually means? And of course, like Derek brought up, the necromancy. What happens when we get darker and darker with maybe trying to bring back esoteric knowledge from the other side? Meaning, if we let somebody die, or not let them, let's say in a natural process, but then we let them rot and bring them back at the very bounds of whatever this possible, let's say, technology would be to maybe get information back from the river Styx, as he said. So pretty wild stuff, as we always say. But what are your thoughts? How ready are we for human resurrection? What does this look like? What about the definitions of death and everything in between? 702-957-1037. Let's go to Daryl in New York. Are you there? Test 1 2.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Holy smokes, everything's fixed. What's up, Daryl? How are you tonight?
Oh, I'm good. That was a great call. And I got to tell you, I was listening to a podcast today that they were talking about this subject. And it was actually, they had the technology that they said, in case of a major extinction, they have a way to resurrect humans through DNA. And you're talking about it tonight. Like, I was absolutely listening to this today. I'm like, are they kidding? They have a backup plan, like in case of extinction, break glass. You know, I'm just thinking, you know, what could go wrong, right? Like, how's that person going to like adapt? I think they have to have a lot of money put aside for a psychiatrist. First of all, you know, you never know, right?
Yeah.
This person
I could see coming back seriously broken. If you were dead for some period of time, even like let's say just a few days, I could see coming back broken, like just shaken. Even if you like came back, let's say whole, in whole.
Right.
It might break your psyche, right? Like, and again, that's why these definitions are important. Kind of doing the whole exploration of what that human condition is, but then saying you destroy it entirely, but then you also bring it back in almost the same breath. What does that do to a person? I think you're right.
Exactly. And who are their parents? Are they going to bring someone back 1,000 years ago? Or whose DNA are they using? Are they going to use old sperm from sperm banks? Are they just going to, do they have their own, like library of already, picked out sperm? Is it their own DNA? Who knows whose DNA is it? Whose DNA is it anyway? Like, I'm wondering too, like, let's say like there is a reincarnation issue that, there's somebody waiting to be reincarnated and they wind up in this kind of like duality of another personality because they used somebody's DNA when it was not their turn yet. Somebody else shows up to get reincarnated. It could go like that, and whose memory are they going to have? And what if it's like a Twilight Zone episode? I'm thinking like, every day that they bring them back to life, they're going to die over and over again. They're going to never stop dying, It could be like a terrible nightmare, You make deals with the devil like that, and you wind up getting like some kind of bad deal, So maybe every day.
The old bad deal, the bad deal with the devil. What's Matt say? Matt's got this down. He says that the devil makes short deals, right? You always take the short end of the stick because the devil's got forever, and you don't. You don't.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this sounds like cloning basically to me. I think it's possible that they're cloning people. I mean, they can clone horses and sheep and everything, so why not people? But what happens, to that soul? I mean, what do they come back as? Do they come back as themselves? I mean, even when you hear like transplant people, like they wind up getting some characteristics of the heart of the person that they got their heart from, or their eyes, or something like that. I mean, you get part of somebody's DNA, and you wind up getting some of their personas, including your own. So it's kind of complicated in that way.
It's extremely complicated. I actually almost pulled that up. Jennifer dropped that in the Discord a while back, and I was thinking of incorporating that tonight. I don't like to make shows too convoluted in the same sense of things. We'll talk about that another time, encapsulated in its own thing. It deserves its own discussion. But you're right. In sense of, let's say, actually taking body parts of one person and putting it in another, like how much, let's say, residual soul or residual energy from one person to the next actually sticks and transfers even. And so the interesting part about the eyeballs tonight, when we started with this discussion, which kind of got me like going tonight, I was like, well, what the hell? They're talking about these eyeballs that revived a glimmer of activity after death. They sort of simulated to the eyeball this fake blood, sort of oxygen flow, sort of like it was reattached to the central nervous system. And the eyeballs, fully dead, started responding to light, right? Like what in the world is going on? Like how do you define death after that? My goodness.
Well, my friend told me this. She had donated her father's organs. He wanted that for his death wish type of thing, but she didn't know, and she wasn't aware until after the fact, that they take your eyes out. If you donate organs, you're still living when they remove them. They don't take them out of your dead body. They take it out of your living body. Isn't that creepy?
That's there's a reason. Like everybody make your own decisions, but there's a reason I changed my donor status in the last 6 to 8 months. Yeah. I keep hearing horror stories about this stuff. That's terrifying. Yeah. No thanks. Yeah. Why don't you give me a chance with all my parts before you start removing them? I'd like that very much. Thanks.
I'd say, like, let me go on a slab on a science table in a class, and they could dissect me or something like that when I'm dead already.
When it's over, like fully over, not like good enough. I don't like good enough. Don't give me the good enough. Oh my goodness! Yeah, see, it's complicated, isn't it? It's super complicated, Daryl. Yeah.
You take dead tissue and then you revive it, like, even Jesus didn't look so good. I heard after his resurrection, he didn't look the same. I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't know. I heard, that's a story I heard. I wasn't there.
I wasn't there either. Daryl, you're the best. We're out of time. Daryl here, good friend of mine, good friend of the show's. Hang tight. You're welcome to stay right there. Just mute up. Please give her a follow. She's got a YouTube channel. She sings in English and French, has some stuff about Morgellons and other stuff. Go give her a follow. Links in the description. You're the best, Daryl. Thanks for the call. All right, we're doing this. We're still talking about, you got it, human resurrection. What does it mean? What about the definitions of what being dead means? What about all the rest of this? It seems, well, on its face, easy, but I think the more you think about it, the more complicated this gets. This is Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Don't go anywhere. More human resurrection. How ready are we? And your calls when we return. Be right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and we are streaming on Rockfin, YouTube, D-Live, and Twitter, and we're broadcasting live on the Fringe FM. Tonight, we're taking your phone calls as we discuss the idea, that's right, of human resurrection. We're not talking about Osiris. We're not talking about any of that stuff. Actually, we kind of are. We're talking about Jesus, Osiris. We're talking about the idea. One, how about the definition of resurrection? All right, sorry, the definition of death. What does that even mean? It's changed over the years, right? With resuscitation, and I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, and you'll see what I mean by that. It's changed, right? The definition of death. But what if, right? Let's say we're able to conquer death somehow and actually bring people back. What does that mean? And not just for death itself. What about bringing people back as, let's say, partially or even whole or some version of in between? You tell me what that looks like and what your thoughts are. One more time, 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037, and we'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. Thanks for being very patient, James. Let's go to James Salcedo of Salcedo Paranormal. James in Michigan. Welcome to Troubled Minds. How are you, my bro? Test 1 2. We got a Discord malfunction. We'll get back to James in just one sec. This is where he hears me and I don't hear him. He's going to reboot, and let me know when you're back, James. All right, so we're still doing this. So it's complicated, right? So remember resuscitation, and this is the scary part, right? Like 100 years ago, people would get pulled out of from drowning, right? Unfortunately, it happens. But what the thing would be is they'd pull people out. They'd agitate them in particular ways, trying to save them, and not realize what saved them. And it was the chest compressions and the clearing the airway and putting air in the lungs, and they would actually just be able to revive people, right? And it took a long time for them to figure this out. There's this whole sordid history of this, and I've got a whole article on this. Read it all tonight, and it's a little bit morbid, including, I'm not kidding you, they used to think that part of the process was blowing actual smoke up your ass, meaning that they would take like a pipe and they would put like a tube and blow let's say tobacco smoke literally up your anus, and they thought that was part of reviving people once they had drowned, right? So some pretty terrifying things. I didn't know it, but I put two and two together, and that's where the term comes from. Blowing smoke up your ass. Oh boy. Speaking of which, James, please don't tell me I'm blowing smoke. How are you, my friend? Welcome to Troubled Minds. Are you there? Test 1 2.
I'm okay. That's an uncomfortable place to come in. I'm okay.
Hey man, we're bros, so I thought I'd make it weird for you. Is it weird enough, or you want it to get more weird?
I think it's weird enough.
Okay, all right. Just checking. I'm just checking. So what is your thoughts on this idea of death as a definition and how it's always changing? And then two, what about the human resurrection? Are we ready, or anything in between? Whatever your thoughts are. You know how we do this. There are no rules. You just do you.
Yeah. If I feel like if I were to allow myself to try to consider all the options, I would have no idea what to say here. There just seems to be a whole lot to this. But I think what it really comes down to, again, as we talk about we've talked about before in so many shows, and I'm sure we'll keep talking about, is what happens to the consciousness, what happens to whatever it is, the consciousness or soul or whatever it is, until science figures out what that is and how to control it. Then I feel like any kind of resurrection would only be partial.
Meaning we would leave something behind, right? Like there's almost no way to, once somebody passes, whatever that means, whatever that, again, weird definition of, again, complicated. Once they do cross that veil, the threshold, whatever it is, you're saying that the idea is probably that they will not come back in full. That's the idea here?
Yeah, scientists may be able to bring back the body and even have it, control it to where it can walk around and talk and do all the things that a body can do, but it would just be people controlling it. It wouldn't have its own thoughts. It wouldn't, or at least it wouldn't have the full capabilities that most people have. At least that's what I feel like anyway with that. So, and really the idea of scientists or anyone ever figuring out what consciousness is, in a way I hope they never do, because then they'll be able to control it, and that's even more frightening in a way than just bringing a body back to life.
Yeah, as always, right? These things are complicated. In general terms, it's like, okay, dead is dead. Not really. I mean, that donor stuff freaks me the hell out. It's like they're pulling like parts out of like people that might make it. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, how do we know? Hey, I'm living here, right? That joke's from a Night Stalker a little bit earlier. Hey, I'm living here. And I don't know, man. And so I think it is interesting that, let's say you do crossover, whatever that means, and then you don't come back in full. What stays? Is it this partial soul that stays? Is it? And again, what about Night Stalker's idea too? That gets even more creepy. If you stay dead longer, right? Let's say several days, a week, let's say 2 weeks, let's say a month. What happens then, right? Like, do you come back like fewer and fewer, let's say pieces of yourself, and you come back more like literally The Walking Dead or something like this? I mean, that starts to get incredibly terrifying. And if they're going to do this in terms of trying to find out like what's on the other side, like come tell us, homie. We want to know, right? Man, oh man, it gets sick, doesn't it?
It does. Just for anyone out there who's looking for an interesting book to read that kind of touches on this, a Stephen King book that I read, Revival, that kind of touches on these things. So yeah, but yeah, and that's the thing too. You know, in various cultures and religions, and they have this idea of the soul or the consciousness having multiple parts. So, you know, maybe that would be something that would happen in some way. And then, of course, if scientists figure out, and I keep saying scientists, but just people in general, figure out how to choose those parts that they want to bring back, then, you know, they could really make, again, of course, this always goes back to what people do the best, seems like in a lot of cases, which is military applications. You know, what would make for a perfect soldier? You know, you bring back their ability to analyze situations and react to them, but then you also bring back their, let's say, their anger or their, you know, those parts of them that would maybe help them keep going, but nothing else. Then is that really, you know, what is that? Yeah, and then so as always, complications ensue, and like you said on the battlefield, right? Like you can just bring your buddy back. You have like the fancy EpiPen, you know. You're like, oh, we lost one, guys. Like, oh, that's cool, I got him. We'll bring him back like it's a video game. You stab him with the EpiPen, and boop, he's up and ready to fight again.
I mean, that sounds ridiculous, but what if we're close to that? And that's the scariest part about this is that, we know there's a ton of stuff happening with DARPA and whatnot. We've talked about, taking de-aging pills, right? Actually with the military to sort of keep the human body in a fighting state for as long as possible and to fight aging, right? With DARPA, they've been known to work on that. It's real. Google that. I'm not kidding. That's a real thing. But of course, in terms of what cost is always my question, right? So sure, you could keep like the young, fit person ready to fight for a little bit longer, right? In the best shape of their life type of thing. But at what cost? Like how many years are you taking off the end, or how many crippled years do they actually have to take over as a result of those things? And again, in this sense of like crossing over and resurrection, I think there's something to it. I don't know, man. Like I'm with you. This is creepy in a lot of ways, including especially what is the definition of death? That's the one that gets me, man. Like this has changed over time. So at some point, do you think it's possible that we won't have a dead definition anymore? Do you think at some point that will be a defunct definition, and it's only, it's always like Princess Bride, only mostly dead? You think that'll ever be a thing?
Well, I mean, maybe if you think of what is the definition of life. So, and I mean, there's and we talked about this before too. Do machines have life? Could machines with AI, let's say, have life? Could AI be alive? Could clones be alive? In the same sense that we are alive? I think it's hard to say what's going to happen with that. I do think definitions, they're this comes up again and again too. Things get complicated and messy, and yeah, it's I could definitely see. Now I would imagine though that different governments, they would still have their own definition of what is dead and what is alive, just for their convenience. Whatever works best for them. But beyond that, it's who can say for sure.
That's even more terrifying. Having a, let's say, politically relevant or irrelevant definition of a fungible dead. It's like, we could still use him. Let's bring that guy back. Right? Or not. Or they're like, nah, he was a klutz anyway. Let him be dead, right? Like, I don't know. This is where this gets creepy. Great stuff as always, James. What else you got for us, my friend?
I'm trying to think here. I think that's it for now. Yeah, it's just really, really hard to put this into a lot of words, or to summarize it as well. So great calls all night so far already, as always, and looking forward to hearing what everyone else says. And maybe I'll hang around. I'll stick around, and I will talk to you maybe later on.
Sure, sounds good. You're welcome to stay right there, as you know. James here, good friend of mine, good friend of the show's, and of course, he's the paranormal expert of Troubled Minds. He's got a paranormal podcast called Salcedo Paranormal. He's an author of many books, actually. You can find his link in the description down below. Give James some love, buy some books, go follow his podcast, come join his Discord. All those links are actually now incorporated in one single link down below, because we've done the thing, and we've got all his stuff in one place, so you can come check it out. Go say hi to James, a very good dude, very good friend of mine, and he won't disappoint. He's every bit as fantastic as he sounds here on the show. Appreciate you, bro. All right, let's keep on trucking. Now, let's get back to this real quick. Like I mentioned, the blowing smoke up your ass, right? Just to make it weird for James, because it's funny to make it weird for James. But I think it actually wasn't just for him, but it was also opportune timing. So check this out. I'm going to get to this Dyson sphere in a sec, but this idea of resuscitating people and the idea of actually, here it is. This is from scroll.in, and it says the the science of resurrecting the dead has a creepy history, right? And I was reading some of this. It's fascinating when you kind of go down some of these rabbit holes and find out what's actually going on with this. And this is the whole resuscitation thing, right? So in the old days, we're talking, a couple hundred years ago, this type of stuff, right? They actually had the idea of death was, if you did have this drowning or suffocation sort of situation, you would be dead, right? And again, so back in the 18th centuries, they started to realize that you could actually sort of agitate the body and begin them breathing again, and sort of through through like a natural process, be able to resurrect the dead, right? In specific terms for like the 18th century, right? Methods changed it right from the article here, but well into the 19th century, resuscitative efforts were understood to require the stimulation of the body back into mechanical action. Humane societies often recommended warming up the drowning victim and attempting artificial breathing. Whatever the method, most important was jump-starting the body machine back to function. External stimulation, they said the rubbing and massaging practiced by little Roland's parents, this is a little boy that had drowned, was essential. And like I said, they sort of learned through trial and error that you could agitate the body of a drowning person and sort of reanimate that function, that motor function, back into the body. They didn't realize it was clearing the airway. They didn't realize it was pumping water out of the lungs and getting the respiration back in and the rest of this. They didn't realize what was actually happening in those terms, but they did realize there was some success. And so this is what I'm saying. In the old days, like the 18th century and even before that, it was not known scientifically, at least we're told, right? Who knows what that actual story goes back thousands of years. But that they didn't know that you would actually have to do this. And here's the one that blown smoke up the ass, because I thought this was super funny and worth mentioning. It says probably most exciting for the body's interior was the fumigation with tobacco smoke, is what they called, of a drowning victim's colon that humane societies also proposed. Yep. You got it. Good resuscitative efforts demanded the blowing of smoke of an apparently dead person's anus. And there you go, right there in the article. The 20th century, of course, brought potentially fatal hazards, such as just as drownings multiplied by the 18th century because of the increased industrial use of waterways, etc., so on. But then methods changed. Resuscitative efforts are now focused increasingly on stimulating the heart. This might involve manipulating an apparently dead body into a variety of positions. Chest compressions and artificial respiration techniques became increasingly common too. So this is a fantastic article. Check it out. The science of resurrecting the dead has a creepy history, and that's what I'm talking about. Now this is a well done article, and this is definitely worth considering if you have some time to read. Links in the description down below. I had a good time reading this stuff tonight, learning about a bunch of stuff I didn't know about. Now let's get to a couple things real quick before we finish. We are still taking your calls, 702-957-1037. We'll put you on the show. But check this out. Hang tight, Robert. Let me get to a couple things real quick. Now, this is a wild one. I wanted to shoehorn this in here because this is one of those ones that makes you really scratch your head and wonder what the hell is going on here. This is, let's see, where was it? It was right here. Where was it? No. Lots of good stuff to continue talking about. We got that one, and we'll go to that eventually. Here we go. This is from Popular Mechanics. Now, check this out. This is absolutely wild. What's up, Catalina? Zombie show, indeed. Also, a quick shout-out, too, to Laura Jean B. and, again, S Magician over there on the on Fringe FM Discord. Look, a Dyson sphere could bring humans back from the dead, researchers say. Now, a Dyson sphere, in let's say layman's terms, it's a sphere they create around the sun that collects electricity. It collects it collects power from the sun itself, right? That latent sort of power that's just like a solar energy, all right? So that's what a Dyson sphere is, and they say that's how probably the first way we're going to be able to find aliens out there. We're going to detect a Dyson sphere of some sort in a highly technological society, all right? But this gets even more weird. So Russian researchers have outlined several ways technological resurrection may be possible in the future, including a method called digital immortality, restoration based on recordings. Listen to this. In this method, a super-intelligent AI uses the cosmic Dyson sphere megastructure to harness computing energy from the sun. Humans can't build a Dyson sphere yet, of course, but the researchers say nano-robots could one day do the job. And now, so the idea is that the super-intelligent AI is powered with this immense power source that is this alien sun, all right? So this gets super weird because they're saying that, here we go, a megastructure called the Dyson sphere will provide a super intelligent AI with the enormous amounts of power it needs to collect as much historical and personal data about you, of course, from the ridiculous surveillance state, right? Thanks, Facebook, for the digital immortality. But then it continues, so it can rebuild your exact digital copy. Once it's finished, you'll live your whole life again in a simulated reality, and when the time comes for you to die again, you'll be transported into a simulated afterlife, where you'll get to hang out with your friends, family, and favorite celebrities forever. Yeah, there you go. There's a Dyson sphere resurrection. And this, of course, is outlined in this guy's paper, which we talked about earlier, Alexei Turchin. And he wrote this entire paper regarding resurrection and the different ways where this could actually happen. And he's all over the place. He's talking about metaphysics. He's talking about all kinds of stuff. Holy smackaroni. I'm sorry, Robert. You have been waiting for a very long time. I thought it said 24 seconds. Robert in Pennsylvania, welcome to Troubled Minds. Go right ahead, sir. Sorry about that.
I was just sitting here thinking while you're talking about this Dyson sphere, this may already be the case that there is that a Dyson sphere was created, and that we're, like you just were saying earlier, this life is a memory, and then we go to another. When we die, we go to another Dyson created reality. Maybe it's already happening.
Maybe that is the actual resurrection cycle of what would you call it? Reincarnation. Maybe that's the cycle. It's in a Dyson sphere with a super powered AI. Oh boy.
It may be. It may be the whole. It may be right now. We wouldn't know. I mean, if their theory is correct, all right, we may already be existing within it.
Agreed. And I think that's the bizarre thing about the nature of reality is what do you believe? Because it could be. Let's say this is like they described in your afterlife. You'll get to kick it and hang out with your friends. Are we not kicking it and hanging out with our friends right now in this moment and talking about amazing things and having a good time? Sure we are, right?
Yeah. Sure, and that part where you said about it has all the digital information and recreates your whole existence to where you repeat your life.
Then that would be reincarnation, wouldn't it?
Sure. But the reason I called was that conversation that Daryl was where she mentioned about the organ transplants and stuff. Organ transplants are kind of like a resurrection, right? They're taking living tissue, let's say a liver, a heart, or whatever, and they're putting it into another person's body, and to some extent that means that they're resurrecting the person that was the donor.
In some sense, right? Exactly. So that the organ lives on. And we talked about that a little bit earlier, like how much of that actually transfers over. Like I said, Jennifer shared an article where you transfer some sort of maybe limbs or lung transplant or something significant, and people start to have bizarre visions of somebody else's life, right?
Yes, and I know you're going to be going to a break soon, and I've got a little bit more to say about that, so I hope that you would hold me over until for the third hour.
Of course, my friend. Of course. 100%. So we have about, let's say, 45 seconds for you. So give us your final thought here. We'll hold you over and get right back to you as soon as possible.
Well, it's like I told my wife, when it's my time, I don't want my organs donated. And that to some people that may sound selfish, but I actually believe that if a piece of me is in somebody else's body, that means my soul can't cross over, and I'm trapped in somebody else's body until they die.
Which seems pretty terrifying to me. Notice they didn't take the ancient Egyptians when they mummified them. They didn't give their organs to somebody else. They buried them with them in jars, so they could recycle them themselves and not give them to somebody else.
Kind of like bottled tomatoes.
or worse, or far worse than that. Robert, you're the best. Hang tight. We're going to get right back to you in just a moment. Robert here, a good friend of mine, good friend of the show's. He's got a book called Stories from a Fractured Mind, the Robert Collection. Give him some love. Links in the description. Check out the book. Very good stuff. He sent me a couple copies. I read it. It's amazing. All right, let's do it. Let's get the hell out of here. As we finish, it goes exactly like this. I appreciate you guys listening. Thanks for being part of this discussion. Thanks for just letting your mind wander and take us to places where, many times we couldn't. So as we finish, thank you for listening. From our troubled minds to yours, have a great night. If you're listening on the Fringe FM, stay tuned for Joe Roop Lighting the Void. If you're listening to us on any other platform, stay tuned for a third hour of Troubled Minds. All right, be sure, be strong, be true. Thank you for listening. From our troubled minds to yours, have a great night. Boo, I overshot it. I actually took it off the air. A little bit short of the outro there. But yeah, all right. So there we go. We are off the Fringe. We're going to keep on talking about this. We got Robert on the line. He waited a very long time, so I'm not going to make him wait any longer. We're going to just cut the music here and go right back to Robert. We'll take the break after him. We're looking to hear from you guys, though. What do you think about this idea of resurrection? What about the ever-changing definition of death? What happens when we're brought back from wherever the hell they bring us back from? Zombies and not zombies, anywhere in between. What about this Dyson sphere and this thing we just brought up, talking about the sort of let's say reincarnation cycle? Is this part of it? Is this not part of it? Lots to talk about, lots to think about. 702-957-1037. Right back to Robert. You're on Troubled Minds. Go right ahead, my friend.
Now, before embalming became a routine, people would be buried, and sometimes they weren't dead. There was something that was going on back in before modern science, where people would go into a cataleptic state, and then the doctor would presume they're dead, and then they'd be buried. Matter of fact, there was some people who would be buried, and they'd have a bell that extended from the inside of their coffin, a string or something that would ring a bell to alert the world that they were still alive, so that they could be dug up and rescued. As a matter of fact, Edgar Allan Poe wrote a horror story, a short story about that. He called it The Premature Burial.
That sounds fine. This is
Wouldn't
fine.
That be Wouldn't that be horrible to wake up in your own coffin, And matter of fact, that's a lot of what people think. Some researchers believe were the actual source of the vampire legends, is that people were buried alive. They thought that they were dead, and they were buried alive, and when the coffins were open, they would see them, have scratched at their coffins and down to bare bone, that sort of stuff.
That's terrifying.
That'd be horrible.
Yeah, imagine if you had like one of those lazy families that didn't include the bell. No. Hey, make sure you outfit me with a bell, please, because just in case, right? Just in case.
I can't think of anything more horrible way to die than that.
Right.
To wake up in a and not be able to get out. Then there was the case of Edgar Allan Poe wrote a story called The Case of M Valdemar, where a hypnotist, a mesmerist, puts this man who's on death's door into a suspended hypnotic state right at the moment that he died. And well, this goes on where the man is communicating with the mesmerist from wherever dead place he's at, until they reach a point where this Valdemar begs the narrator to put him back to sleep quickly or to wake him up, because he keeps shouting, "I'm dead, I'm dead, I'm dead, I'm dead." But when the narrator, when the mesmerizer brings him out of his trance, this Valdemar's entire body immediately starts to decay into a nearly liquid mass of loathsome, detestable putreds. I'm reading this from Wikipedia.
No problem. You're allowed. Hey, the Ministry of Truth, man. They're there for us.
Yeah, but that was a case where, and that's like, there were some people who believed back in those days that was a true story, and Poe went along with that for a while before he finally admitted that it was fiction. Now, one last thing: when we're talking about resurrection, I'm sure you're aware of this Svalbard Global Seed Vault, which all the seeds that existed in the world are stored up there in case something happens and we have to reseed the earth. Well, I'm thinking, you think something like that may someday happen, where everybody's DNA is collected and stored just like those seeds in case they have to repopulate the planet?
Like the ancient astronaut theorists say about Noah's Ark, that it wasn't all the animals on the ark, it was a DNA bank. Something like that, right?
Sure. Well, that would certainly be a global resurrection if they had to do that. And I'm not. Matter of fact, I sometimes think that they're already doing that. These ancestry DNA, things that they send you in the mail and you send your DNA or what is that? I can't remember what the heck.
23andMe.
Ancestry, whatever. But
Ancestry.
They collect your DNA, and of course, somehow the FBI and everybody else gets a hold of that stuff. Eventually, that's how they caught some cold cases. They maybe have a government contract to provide every doggone DNA sample that's sent in there to the government authorities, and maybe that's what's going on, is that there's a seed vault being planned or existing already, and they're saving human DNA in it.
That wouldn't surprise me. Would it surprise you?
Not the least bit, because one thing about these people, these evil people, is that they seem to have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen in the next few minutes or the next few months, a few years. They seem to have a pretty good idea what's down the road, and I think that they would prepare for that in just that manner, because they still need worker bees.
Yeah, absolutely. Back to the old, you're on the battlefield and Larry gets taken out. Is he worth bringing back? Larry was kind of a klutz. Let's just let him lie. That's right. That type of stuff. They're like, well, how useful are you? Right? Like, it becomes a sick question, doesn't it? That's the worst part.
Yeah, well, that's something that everybody should think of also, right along with the idea of organ transplants, is, do they really want to lose control of their own DNA? I would never send a sample of my DNA to any outfit for any reason, a healthcare outfit or whatever, all right, because I don't know what they're going to do with that. And, when it's my time to go, I want to go. I don't want to be resurrected.
Hey, what if you got an outstanding tax bill? What if the government wants you back to pay? What if the government wants you back to pay your back taxes or something, and you don't have a choice anymore?
I would be more concerned about the bill collectors.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
I would be more concerned about the bill collectors coming after me. I'm glad there's no toll-free number to heaven.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's probably like an auto hang-up constantly. They're like, please hold, please hold, please hold. That's all you get. There's no direct line to heaven. You're the best, brother. What else you got for us tonight?
That's it.
Well, thank you for the phone call. Happy Thursday to you. Have a fantastic weekend. Always a pleasure, my friend.
You too, and I'll tune into Troubled Minds News tomorrow night. One more thing.
Sure.
Those little short ones that you do, that you were doing there for a while, those little short news videos that you were doing, like 2 or 3 minutes long.
Yeah.
They were really entertaining, and I think you should do that some more because that's also a good promotion for your podcast.
Okay. I actually enjoy doing them, and it was an experiment to see if it got traction. I'm glad you enjoy it. I'll put it back on the docket, okay? We'll get some this weekend for you.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Appreciate it. Have a great night.
Weekend.
Thanks, you too. That's Robert. Robert, again, please give him give his book a look. It's fantastic stuff. I fancy him a cross between, like I said, Rod Serling and Philip K. Dick. That's the type of stuff he writes. So check it out. Short stories. It's called Stories from a Fractured Mind. He doesn't call to have me plug his book. I do because he's been very kind to me, and he's been very supportive of not just helping getting Troubled Minds and myself on Rockfin, also just spreading the word. He's trying to get our name in radio stations and brains out there, and just he's been a huge advocate of mine, and so I think it's only fair for me to be a huge advocate of his, especially since he's such a talented dude. So there we go. All right, so we're gonna take a quick break. Looks like we got APOC on the line. We got Jennifer on the line as well. We got some let's say brilliant people lined up, ready to go. So quick 2-minute break. We're still talking about human resurrection. How ready are we? What about the definition of death and all the rest of this? As it changes, as it doesn't, well, what's it make you think? Oh boy, are you ready to come back? I'm not so sure I am. All right, here we go. We're doing this.
Strange from
Shut up, Michael Strange. We're playing some music, and we're going to be right back. 2-minute break. More Troubled Minds on the way. We got APOC and Jennifer, and of course your calls as well. Third hour Troubled Minds coming up. Be right back. All right, who's ready for this? Let's do it. 702-957-1037, troubledminds.org. Click the Discord link, get your ass in here. We're talking about resurrection. We're talking about the definition of death. We're talking about how this is extremely complicated, even though, right, let's say to the zeitgeist, to the regular masses of people out there, the normies, as it were, death seems to be a very, very specific thing. But if you look back through history, just like Robert was describing, the Robert over there on Rockfin, hey, they used to bury people with a bell, just in case they blew it, and they were like, oh, oops. What about that whole resuscitation idea, blowing smoke up people's asses, right? Like, because they didn't realize that the particular agitations of the body, including the lung compressions and clearing the airway and getting air into the lungs and the rest of this, would actually bring people back. They considered it a form of actual resurrection. Well, when death has such sort of a, let's say, a scary time in history of definitions, what about death now? And back to this article where we started with tonight, from Science Alert, scientists revived a glimmer of activity in the human eye after death. Now, these were eyeballs that were donor eyeballs. These people were long dead, and they were able to actually, by simulating attachment back to the central nervous system with simulated blood and oxygen, the eyeballs started responding to light. What? They're supposed to be dead. What the hell's going on? So what about the definition of death? It turns this whole thing on its head, and it kind of makes me a little queasy, if we're being perfectly honest. 702-957-1037. What do you think? Let's go to APOC in somewhere in the Midwest. APOC, in Middle America. What's up, APOC? Welcome to Troubled Minds in Oklahoma. It just came to me. How are you?
Yes, that. I'm okay. How are you?
Doing very well. Just doing crazy stuff like we always do. I'm sure you got some thoughts on this. What about the definition of death, these eyeballs, and what happens with human resurrection? What does all this mean to you?
So a guy back in, I think it was 1907, did a test on approximately 6 people where he had them, they were on their deathbed, basically, and as they were going to die, he weighed them, and the weight tables were beveled, so you couldn't lose any water or anything like that, any fluids. And his results were, at the time of death, they would lose 21 grams of weight, all of them. which is pretty interesting. So the question for me then in this scenario is there something that leaves at a certain point, regardless of whether our body is technically dead? And then you had mentioned, if you come back, do you come back as yourself? There are things called walk-ins, apparently, where a lot of people, after they've had a near-death experience, have come back with a different personality and different talents, I guess you could say. And they either, some of them don't remember their past, or they have detached from their past in a way that just is completely different. It's just off the scale. They're a different person. So that was pretty interesting. Another thing I wanted to bring up was that in our history, biblically, when they talked about being born again, how they do baptisms and you're born again. The baptisms were in the water because they would literally drown the people, and they would resuscitate them, and they supposedly were having near-death experiences while they were dead, and they would come back, and having had that experience and having quote unquote seen God. And that was the experience. It wasn't just a little dip in the water. It was, they killed you and they brought you back. So those were a couple of interesting things. I could do more, but what do you think about those?
I think that's pretty wild. So it seems like this whole agitating the body to bring them back after drowning seems to be like the old society or human race with amnesia, right? Because if they've been doing this stuff for a long time, drowning you and bringing you back, they kind of knew how to resuscitate you, or unless they were flipping. I mean, unless they were flipping coins, and they're like, well, they usually come back, so this should be fine. Because that seems even worse. That seems super terrible to me. I like the concept there in terms of the show tonight. Perfect stuff. What about and I did the what 21 grams was it? I think that's a movie too, right? With Will Smith.
I have no idea. I haven't. I don't know. I learned about this a long time ago. But I just looked it up and verified that yes, it was a thing. So.
Yeah, no, it is.
I think his name. Yeah, I think his name was Dr. McDougal or something like that.
Yep, it definitely is a thing, and we've talked about it in the past as well on this show. So it's and again, like the mainstream science tells you, this is horseshit. It never happened. It was like it was a small sample size, and it was shoddy equipment, and imprecise measurements and all the rest of that stuff. I don't know, like without doing it myself, and that's a pretty dark thing to be doing. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna take it on. We'll drink some maybe juice. How about that? So what about this idea too about the definition of death and how it's changed? Does that terrify you, with these eyeballs sort of being coaxed back to life after they've been removed from the person they belong to? Oh, how terrifying is that?
No, it doesn't terrify me. I again, it's like, okay, now we get into electromagnetism and how the body works, and even if our body is responding and has neurons, happening, and apparently even after we are quote unquote brain dead, our neurons will sort of wake up again and come back. And that's one way that they can revive people, especially if they're frozen and stuff like that. So, it doesn't bother me because I think that there's a system to things. And I think it gives us the potential to come back, the potential to use the body should we come back. And again, like I said, otherwise there might be like walk-ins. There might be another, soul who wants to step in and take a look around for a while. I don't know. But no, it doesn't scare me at all. I think it's really interesting. One of the things that people might say about it is that it negates the near-death experience, I don't think it does. I think we have the capability to kind of access different layers of of reality in altered states, and that is one thing that we can do. If we're going to sort of be on our way, quote unquote, to death, we might be able to get a glimpse of that. But to take it back to reincarnation, which can't remember his name. He brought up reincarnation in the last call. Sorry, who was that?
The Robert.
Robert, thank you.
Yep.
The Robert. It's the Robert. But yeah, he brought up reincarnation, which I was also thinking about in terms of we're, just if you research reincarnation, it's crazy. You do not have to be related to the people. It's not a genetic thing most of the time. And there are some really mind-blowing experiences that people have had in being able to remember somebody else's life and having it validated and verified. So, I don't think that we're just our bodies, and I don't think that, if we get quote unquote resurrected, we might even be our same selves. And that our body is not necessarily associated to our soul, but in a way it is, from my perspective, because I have a weird viewpoint on that, but yeah, I think a lot of things are possible, and if we contemplate all these things and keep looking into it, I think there are a lot of pieces that we can take and go down rabbit holes with, for sure.
100%, which is why we do this. This is the whole point of this. It's like, hey, science is great, but science doesn't know all the things quite yet. And it seems like Graham Hancock a little bit may be right. I think, maybe Neil deGrasse may be right in some cases. It's nice to take a lot of things from a lot of people and consider maybe there's more. And I'm sure you understand that, and that's why you're here. You're in the right place, my friend.
Oh, I do have one more thing.
Sure.
So what was that device you were talking about?
The Dyson sphere.
Dyson sphere. So what if the Dyson sphere, or a Dyson sphere, like he was talking about, is sort of connected to us, and what if it's related to the sun? The sun, if you look at how information travels through light, there's a theory that we get information from cosmic light. And if the sun is one of those information portals, the sun could potentially be a conduit, like a Dyson sphere, to interact and help sort of support the reincarnation thing. So, yeah, I was thinking about that, and that goes back to electromagnetic stuff and light and energy and all that.
Amen. And this is a new one to me. This paper, by the way, you would be super fascinated with this. This guy by the name of Alexei Turchin, maybe Turchin. He's got this graph of like all kinds of not just, prepared while alive resurrections, reconstruction by AI resurrections, new world model resurrections with new physics, new informational traces, parallel worlds and simulations, use of quantum immortality. He's got partial resurrections, transformative resurrections, transcendental resurrection. Yeah, check it out. You would be super into this paper, and he's got this thing goes for pages and pages and pages and pages, where he talks about all kinds of this shit. It's pretty wild, and I had a good time reading a chunk of it. I didn't get through all of it, but man, oh man, there's some people with some wild ideas out there, and just wanted to point that out to you. Check it out.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out for sure.
Check it out. You're the best. APOC here, a good friend of mine, good friend of the show's. Check her out. She's got a podcast called Apocalypse Tau. And I try and say without saying Apocalypse Now, because she's tricking me. She did dirty tricks. Apocalypse Tau is what it's called. A link's in the description down below. She's got a link tree. And you can go check out her out over there, which I'm going to be on your show coming up soon. I'm pretty sure a little birdie told me. And if I have to twist your arm, I'm going to make that happen.
Sounds good.
All right. We'll see you then, and we'll see you before then. Let's keep on trucking. 702-957-1037. Fantastic call from APOC. We're still talking about this. What about this human resurrections? Are we ready for this? What about the definition of death and how it changes? What happens when they actually send you off and then resurrect you and bring you back? How much of yourself are you still yourself? Lots to talk about, lots to think about. Let's do it. Jennifer in Missouri, welcome to Troubled Minds. Are you there?
Yep. Hear me okay?
Loud and clear. What is on your mind? I'm sure you got some takes on this. What you got for us?
Right. Okay, so awesome topic. Great show.
Thank you.
So death, you're right. Okay. Death it's really hard to define. You know, in the medical field, across the whole spectrum, you know, is it when the heart stops beating? Is it when, you know, the brain ceases to have any kind of activity? You know, what is it anyway? And then you think about it. Basically, death is more of a process, isn't it? You know, when you're looking at it this way, that it's hard to define anyhow. And the lines between life and death, that whole area in between there, it's like this gaping, you know, realm of possibilities. There's something like what you're talking about does and has, and it occurs continuously. One, so, and can ultimately occur. So in the idea of resurrection itself, back in like 2019 in Yale, the Yale Medical School, students there were doing this study called BrainX. And what they did was they took pig brains and the cells in pig brains, and they immersed them in ethanol. And they deprived them of oxygen, and they killed them for like 4 hours. You know, like pretty much like, I mean, a brain cell can only be deprived of oxygen for like 10 minutes at most. Anyway, they ensured that from all appearances, brain cells were dead. Okay, so then they took these cells. Let me go back real quick. I think that all of the stories of resurrecting people, resurrecting gods, it's this ancient wisdom. It's this ancient understanding of some deep processes that are occurring at a cellular level. Because if you go to a cellular level in every living thing, you also consider that the cell itself, the nuclear energy of a cell, that it's essentially the same thing as what's occurring in our solar system. It's a big scope thing, in and out. Go down to the microcosm thing. So anyway, what they did there with those big brain cells is they bathed them. You have a type of baptism, in my opinion. They bathed them in a hemoglobin solution. And hemoglobin, of course, is that protein, red blood cells, make it essential for the red blood cell to exist, to do what it does. They bathed them in this, and then they did this now like 4 hours later, and they bathed them and they soaked them in the solution for like 6 hours, I think is what it said. And the brain cells began to survive and have a resurrection. And they even began firing signals to each other, to begin trying to fire signals. And moving on from that, when you think about the process of cellular death, very interesting thing. You have something that's called apoptosis, something like that, some weird medical term. Anyway, that is basically actually, it's important to mention. Apoptosis, apo, means like it's to fall. I actually wrote it down because it was really important. But apo means fall. Much like when you've heard about like think it's interesting because, Lucifer fell. All these different parallels to this fall. Anyway, apoptosis in cellular death. It's the initiation of death in that cell, but the cellular level, going through constant stresses. You have cells constantly dying off. In the process of it, it can take minutes, depending on the circumstances, what's causing the cell death. It can take, hours, even days, or even longer than that. Once apoptosis takes hold of that cell, because the cell sends out, let me go back. The cell sends out a signal. Call it the eat me signal. Literally, in cellular science and everything else. And it's really weird about that because we hear about this eating me thing. Really weird, sorry, but in Catholicism, with the Mass, you also have, and the blood is the life and all of that. Also have it in the case of Alice in Wonderland. Remember that plug, like that one little plug? Anyway, so the cell is, when it says that, it's cellular suicide. It's given up the ghost, so to speak. It's saying, initiate the death process. Much like Jesus did, too, as far as the account of where is the parallel and what does it mean and what is the wisdom here. So then, at that point, there's these enzymes come in to do the execution. This whole death process, the proteins come and basically eat the cell, start to tear it apart, chop it up, basically. Mitochondria, everything, which we'll get to in just a second. It's torn apart, perceived in the past as being like the point of no return for that cell. Universe is that cell. So even in the idea of Jesus and the resurrection, it was an announcement of sorts. Like if you think about him as being like a universal signal, also on a cellular level, the process takes place the same way, where the executioners come to tear him apart, basically. And he goes through that process of being destroyed. Same way that on a very cellular level, have these executioner cells that come in. There's also something called a Diablo homologue. The Diablo homologue, which Diablo literally means devil. Now, these are all scientific cellular terms. And tears cell apart. Now, as it's going through this process, the mitochondria are being ripped apart and all of that. Something that occurs after, it can happen right up to the point where they previously thought it was impossible for the cells to come back from. They call it the anastasis stage. And it's where these anastasis cells come in, they signal to the mitochondria, to certain mitochondria that have not been completely destroyed yet, that, hey, stop the process. It's really mysterious and strange. This mystery is also mentioned in the religion itself. The mystery is something that can't be understood. The mitochondria itself, if you go back to Star Wars, and you think of the midi-chlorians, or the chlorians, they are supposed to be, he based Star Wars, the midichlorians, off of mitochondria, which he believed might be individual living organisms. Now, in the case of Star Wars, midichlorians came from another galaxy, from another planet out in the galaxy. And communicate in a way, these anastasis. Anastasis means rise again in Greek. And that's basically like it's resurrection. I mean, there's it's a synonym. They're basically the same thing. So these resurrection cells signal to the mitochondria, halt the process, right up to the point of no return, with the black hole idea, where there's a point of no return and it's over with, and it's on a universal level. And they come in, and the mitochondria begin to, in the cell itself, it all starts to fuse back together, acting this nuclear, everything needed to have activity again. They become almost impossible to recognize from the normal healthy cells. This resurrection that happens on a cellular level, say a body, when it's dying, every cell in the body puts out this suicide signal. It's over. Privation of oxygen, heart has stopped beating, brain has stopped. The solution, the idea with the brain X, rinsing them in hemoglobin blood away, the protein and red blood cells, or even the natural cells, the anastasis cells themselves that occur naturally in living things, reverse the process of inevitable death, change course by the message to these mitochondria, the same, like the midichlorians, I guess you could actually mention. These almost seemingly acting like mitochondria kind of seemingly act like they have their own sort of agenda of what they're doing. They're almost independent in a way. If you think about the resurrections of all these previous gods, even the straw man in The Wizard of Oz, they took part of me over here and they threw me over there and they tore me apart. A cellular level that's occurring in the death process. The same thing happens with Osiris. All these resurrection gods, they talk about this. It appears to me then, these ancient people had knowledge about this baptism of how you could bring back cells from the limbo they were in. This could mean that, and not all that, but cells themselves can hang in that limbo indefinitely and still resurrect. Should these other conditions come into play? By what cause? Nobody really knows, because it's a mystery. But should they reverse this inevitable? Should the resurrection cells halt the death of the cell, the death of the universe? Apoptosis, by the way. You ever heard of the, Apophis? Which is said to be this asteroid that's supposed to be like a planet killer. Very interesting parallel there. You have all these different, and also with the Diablo protein, Diablo homolog. There's like the devil homolog in cellular study coming to destroy, to initiate the apoptosis stage of cellular death, the fall of the cell, beginning of the fall, how the resurrection can bring it back. Bring back extinct, you could bring back organs that have been dead indefinite amount of time. Who's to say how long? They must have had knowledge about this, the ancient world, somehow, I think, because all of these stories of resurrection, every single one of them, the only one I'm familiar with particularly well, the Catholic discussion of it, the parallels are unbelievable. I just thought that was interesting, and I wanted to bring that up.
As usual, spot on. There's a lot of this actually. Some of the stuff you were actually talking about, I had ready to go regarding cell death and some other things too. I had the apoptosis ready to go. I didn't have the.
Oh no!
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. You're reading my mind. I didn't have the Diablo homolog here set, but I pulled that up as you were talking and shared it in the chat. But this is exactly sort of not the exact same thing you were saying, but in similar terms, the rabbit hole I was kind of chasing down tonight, and it's difficult to kind of cover it in terms of asking questions and feeding new information constantly. So we do a lot of stuff that I get to that I don't get to. So I'm glad you brought it up because I probably wouldn't have got to it. And you're right.
You might have. I'm so sorry. But also too, I see a parallel. Do you not see that there might be a parallel with these analogies? Glad we're on the same thread. Yeah, definitely. And I think there is a parallel here, not just with it, but then the idea of cellular death. What does it mean, right? Because the actual death of the person ends up becoming sort of just a chain reaction of that cellular death, right? So if you can somehow either halt it, stop it, pause it, freeze it, whatever that happens to be, and then let's say in maybe 150 years from now, maybe
restart it when we can actually stop the process, which I'm going to get to in just a sec, by the way, in case anybody wants to freeze themselves when they pass. I've got the line for you. I don't have an affiliate code or anything, but I definitely got a place for you if you want to check it out. But there we go. MJ, call back. We were just about to get to you. MJ was waiting for about 12, 13 minutes, and he bounced. But so we're good. But I don't know. As always, fantastic stuff, Jennifer. You're reading my mind here. We got to work on your noise gate and stuff. The fans are coming through hot and heavy there.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. We'll figure something out. I'll help you. We can dial that in. There's it just tweaks.
No, I'll
and
just
tricks
adjust it next time. I adjusted it yesterday, and I'll do it again next time I call in. Then. Oh, good. You're fine. It was. I followed everything you were saying, so all good. I appreciate it very much. Thanks for chipping in and adding the amazing stuff per usual. Jennifer here, good friend of mine, good friend of the show's. Check it out. She's got a YouTube channel. Links in the description down below. It says follow Jennifer here. Click it, follow, and all the amazing folks as well. There's so many great people, so many great calls tonight. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you, APOC. Thanks for being here. You guys are the best. Have a great night, then.
You too. Thank you very much. All right, there you go. MJ was waiting, and he dumped, but that's okay. Call back, MJ. We'll put you on the phone here on the show. We're still looking to hear from you guys. What do you think about that? I think there are some pretty interesting parallels regarding not just cellular death, like Jennifer was describing, but then also what about maybe pausing that chain reaction process of cellular death, right? As one begins, think about it, right? Let's say you have like a blunt impact sort of situation. People die from car accidents all the time, right? And in that situation, it's like you splat, like you hit, bam, it just kind of like, the body doesn't break into 10,000 pieces. It's just the impact is enough to sort of cause that, broken consciousness or cellular death, even sometimes without broken bones or like mass carnage, not to get gross to like a body. It's like there's a switch, like a mechanism, like okay, that's enough, we're done. Like no more of this because the next thing's going to be bad. The next thing's going to be worse. It's like the body sort of has a fail safe, right? And so if that's the case, and like you could, sort of not just resurrect the person in that cellular death in that sense, let's say you could even rehabilitate them from the damage they took in an accident, something like that, it becomes spooky, doesn't it? Because if you can actually like freeze that process, and I'm going to get to that in just a second, with this place called, that's right, it's called, what's it called? Alcor Life Extension Foundation. I'll get to that in just one moment. But we're going to get to that, kind of freezing that process of cellular death and where that heads. So we're still taking your phone call, 702-957-1037. Thank you very much for the phone calls. Amazing stuff tonight. As always, everybody, let's go to MJ. MJ in Virginia, you're on Troubled Minds. What do you know about resurrection and this idea about cellular death and the definition of death itself? Go right ahead, sir.
My definition, if it's a resurrection, then it didn't really die. Okay. Because once it's like when you die, they put you in a coffin, your body's still feeding off of itself. That's why your hair and your nails grow, because it's still eating, the nutrition in your body, or the parts of the body are going to go for the nutrients in the body to try to survive. And then once all that runs out, the body is totally gone. Your soul's already left the body. So you can't resurrect the soul, because you can't freeze the soul unless you slow it down so much that the body is like doing a controlled out of body, but you never really get out of body. But it just slows the process of the body down to where it's at minimal needing nutrition of any sorts of nutrients to survive. And it slows it down to where it can spread out the nutrition or the nutrients in the body for a very long period of time. It's like tree seeds around here, and the trees on the East Coast, they fall off of the tree in about October, November time, sometimes December. They have to go through the dormant stage, which means they have to be frozen or get close to freezing. And then in the spring, the seed becomes dormant and it starts to grow. It planted itself. So it never really died in that sense. So the only way they can resurrect is that it didn't totally die.
Okay, that makes sense. So dead is dead, like all the way dead. But like, have you seen The Princess Bride, right? That funny scene where they're talking about he's only mostly dead. You seen that?
No.
Okay, it's funny anyway. It's a hilarious movie. It's a couple hours long. It's an old '80s sort of a classic. If you've never seen it, it's worth your time. I promise you. You'll be like the first 10 minutes. You'll be like, "What the f is this? Why did Mike tell me to watch this?" Then it gets into it. It gets hilarious, super hilarious. But okay, so anyway, mostly dead. So how about this? Let's talk about in those terms then. If the soul leaves and we bring the body back, what happens? Is it like sort of like APOC describes, like walk-ins start to happen, or what happens to the body itself? Is it does it come back like a half of yourself or a third of yourself, some sort of fragment, or is it no soul at all and it's just literally like The Walking Dead, like a damn zombie?
Well, the soul, the consciousness, I feel knows how to operate the human organic computer, which is what the body is. It has memory of its own, and when you leave, your consciousness does leave whatever memories in the body stays there. So it's like algae. If you pull algae out of a pond, throw it on the ground, let it dry out for 3 or 4 or 5 months until it's good and brown, you can throw the algae back in the water, and it'll regenerate. It'll start to grow again. So if you have the human body, and let's say it's dead, clinically dead, your soul leaves, but it's still feeding on itself, like I said, in the coffin. If you start regenerating that's pretty much all you got. I think there'll still be some basic functions because the body has its own memory of functions and what to do. I don't know necessarily that it needs a consciousness to operate. I don't know if anything would walk back in, maybe seeing an opportunity to do something like that. You have absolutely no idea if that is true. You have no idea what's going to walk in. It could be from another dimension. It could be an animal. It could be anything. But I think it would be more of a zombie state that possibly without even a soul or consciousness that you could retrain to do menial tasks because the brain's already got the memory of it, so does the body. It just needs something to activate it somehow, and that could be just electricity or just, nutrients to the body reactivates it, and the body has a separate survival than the consciousness does. So I don't think you'd have much standing. I think it'd be more like a zombie.
Yeah. Okay. So sort of like the meat suit without the spark or whatever. Like, so what runs it? What is it? Is it like the golem of old, where it's waiting for a spark to come back? What does that look like? What does a zombie mean? Let's say metaphysically. That's a crazy term right there too, in terms of how this actually. What's running it? Right. You got like Frankenstein's monster or whatever, right, or something going on with this.
Well, you would have that, but it wouldn't have a consciousness that would know right from wrong. It would just have memory, and it would just do. So it could be, it could go out and kill something, not care about it, because it doesn't have that consciousness of, like I said, right or wrong, emotions, bad feelings. It also wouldn't have any real physical feeling, like nervous system, because the consciousness actually is conscious of the nervous system, but when you burn your hand, there's a split-second pause of reaction of the pain, then you feel the pain. If you put your hand on something and you ignore the heat of the burn to the point to where you don't feel it, and you're conscious doing that, can you do that? And then if it's just a body, doesn't have the consciousness or the morals, I guess you could say, type of thing, it would just be a shell, and you just tell it to do something, and we go do it. Because there's no judgment, there's no criteria, there's no structure. It's just a body that's operating,
which is kind of terrifying. An NPC. An NPC, non-player character. The body's there, functional, moving around, just no actual deep conscious thought. That's pretty terrifying there. What do you think about so dead is dead to you? There's no there's no like sliding scale here with like back to the 1800s and like drowning victims and things like this and resuscitation, and these eyeballs that are like they're able to kind of coax them thinking they're alive again for moments even after they've been removed from donors. Dead is fine by me, but what about as this definition changes and we come back? Do you think that like we were describing when Night Stalker called as well a little while ago, that let's say the longer you're off, the more knowledge you gain from, let's say, the netherworld? Is that possible? That maybe these zombies come back with maybe a dark knowledge of sorts or something like this? Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, you know, if you came back that way, you wouldn't be coming back whole, because you would be an absolute at that point. Because if you're, we're a combination of good and evil always, of dark and light, however you want to put that. So we're that combination always, and that's the consciousness that operates your physical body. If you came back as an absolute, you wouldn't be a whole person either way. I don't care if it's totally angelic or totally evil demon. Either one is an absolute. So you would not be whole, okay, because we have both in us at all times. So if that did come back, I don't even know if you'd be conscious of the fact that was your body. You're just conscious of, being someplace, but I don't think you'd have memory of that being your body. If you got into greater knowledge, I don't know that the greater knowledge would fit into your physical body that you had, because you didn't have the greater knowledge when you left. And that means it's going to have to find room physically in your body to input that information or knowledge someplace. And it may not fit in the same body anymore. Yeah.
That makes sense to me. That seems to track. Again, like I don't know, you know me, I don't know the answers here, but I'm glad we're glad we got you and folks like you that have thought about this a lot more than I have, or have some better insight. So how about this? Given this idea of resurrection, let's say something happens and you did pass. Would you want this to happen to you? Would you want to be brought back?
It would have to be an extreme case of coming back and battling a spiritual war to keep balance. Other than that, no.
Gotcha. All right. If you're like a soldier on the front lines and we need you, you'll come back. But otherwise, it's vacation time, right? time to kick it at the pearly gates or whatever. I'm with you, bro, man. If the things need to be done, let's roll up our sleeves and get them done. 100%. I appreciate you very much, bro. What else you got for us tonight?
That's about it, really. At one time, I was hitchhiking across the United States, and I hooked up with this person and stayed at their house. Well, their cat came in to sleep with me. I was on the couch, and the cat slipped down in the couch. And when I picked the cat up, I thought it was dead because its head was just hanging. I thought maybe it suffocated, and I kept petting it. And finally, like a half hour, just started moving around and getting conscious again. So I think it was close to death or what was going on. I don't know. Or left his body really good. But I think when we think about these things, it's keep it a little bit. When the scientists go into all of this and they're going to try to, resurrect a liver for this 2,000 years old, somewhere along the line, that liver, like a seed from a tree or a plant, went dormant, but it never died. And how they preserved it all that time, I think that's what we would look at for that. But other than that, like I said, dead's dead. Once it's all done, it's all done.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, good stuff. Good enough for me, man. You say it's good enough for me. MJ, you're the best. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for being part of this, and always thanks for the calls. I appreciate it very much.
All right, bye.
Have a great night. There you go. Easy as that. Not as easy as that, because MJ is great, but 702-957-1037. We're kind of getting nearing the end here. James, you got anything to add to that? You've been quiet for an awful long time. Just want to check back in with you, make sure everything's good there.
Yeah, no, great calls. It's funny about the cats. It always seems to come back to cats, but with me anyway, when I'm around, it seems like. But I was just putting in the chat here. I wonder if in some cases, the reason why cats lay in such strange position is maybe they're out of body or something. MJ's story just kind of made me wonder that. And it sounds like I'm joking, but I'm not, because they do. I mean, I've seen cats lay in some just, it's like, how does that not hurt? You know what I mean? So, I don't know. But, and then Jen's call about basically the micro to the macro to everything in between, that was amazing as well. So, but yeah, great calls, and that's about it right now.
Okay, fantastic. Daryl, anything while we got you here, and I'll go into my last bit, and we'll round this up. Test 1 2. Daryl in New York, are you there?
There. Everybody, great calls. Sorry, I kind of I fell asleep for a little bit there, but I want to say everybody, great call, MJ and APOC, and I heard Jen's, and then I think I fell asleep. I'm sorry, but
that's okay.
About the cat. I don't know what it is about cats, but I wonder what James said. If that's what they do, they go out of body and then they visit like their old masters or something. Because and aren't they going to just try to resurrect some older like mammoths first or something before they try to resurrect people? I don't know. It's kind of weird. I feel, but anyway. And the cat said, never mind. You've heard it before.
All good. That's for another show, the woolly mammoths. We talk about that from time to time. But yeah, I think that's what makes it so striking and weird tonight is because we do talk about de-extinction in terms of like the dodo bird or, the carrier pigeon or like the woolly mammoth, things like that, saber-toothed tiger. But we don't really talk about it a lot in terms of, well, what about resurrecting people, right? So resurrecting people it seems to have that back to the very dawn of humanity and telling stories and the rest of that. Again, like a Night Stalker was saying too, with sort of the sun cycle of the death at night and the rebirth in the morning. So there's that, but then also, what about actually doing it? I mean, it turns it into a super creepy aspect of things. So worth a conversation anyway, right?
What if we have no choice though? If we want to continue our human population, that we've damaged our DNA so badly, we actually have to resurrect an old DNA to get the real human back, because we've kind of altered it too much with GMOs and other things, medication, whatever, experiments. It's just maybe that went wrong too much, and maybe it's too late. So we've got to get some old DNA back as soon as possible if we want to continue our species.
That sounds like the Asgard from Stargate. If you've never seen that, check that out. You'll dig it. It's 10 seasons. Yeah, it's 10 freaking seasons. It's on Netflix. Okay, all right. So appreciate it very much, Daryl. Give Daryl a follow. Links in the description down below. James as well, Jennifer as well, APOC as well. We'll get back to you in just a sec, APOC. Let me do this real fast. Thank you, Daryl. Appreciate you jumping back in here. Look at this. Just real fast. If you guys ever wanted to know where you could get your, that's right. This is from Times Now News, and this was actually from April of 2021. Listen to this. Did you know 146 cryogenically frozen people are buried in the desert waiting for science to resurrect them? This is already happening. The Alcor Life Extensions Foundation, located just outside of a luxury suburb in Phoenix, is the facility that is home to as many as 146 bodies of people who were frozen at the time of death. Of course, blah, blah. We talk about this a lot. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's the less important part. This is the more important part right here. Here's the website. It's alcor.org, ALCOR.org. And so there you are. For just a low price of, there's no price listed, but for the low price of whatever they determine it to be, you too can have yourself cryogenically frozen and, saved until, maybe science has a chance to come get you back. Anyway, I was looking at the website here, and this is pretty wild because, cryonics is the practice of preserving life by pausing the dying process using sub-freezing temperatures with the intent of restoring good health with medical technology in the future. And this is what we were talking about when Jen called pausing the dying process, the idea of cellular death, right? And this is the craziest part, right? And I was way into the rabbit hole by the time I found this. But interestingly, look at this. They say right here on their website, the definitions of death change over time as medical understanding and technology improve. Someone who would have been declared dead decades ago may still have a chance today. Death used to be when a person's heart stopped, then when their heart couldn't be restarted, and is now being extended further. They got to learn more buttons and all the rest of this. Of course, modern science. Cryonics sounds like science fiction, but it's based on modern science. Life can be stopped and restarted if its basic structures can be preserved. Vitrification can preserve biological structure very well, much better than freezing. Methods for repairing biological structure at the molecular level can now be foreseen. There you go. And check this out. You scroll down to the bottom, watch it do the things. They've got 190 patients currently. There's 1,412 members, a member of Alcor. You can sign up right here on the website. That's alcor.org. And they're 50 years serving cryonics. 50 years. Are you shitting me? Alcor was incorporated in California in 1972 by Fred and Linda Chamberlain. Fred is now cryopreserved at Alcor, and Linda still works there. 50 freaking years, people. They've been doing this, right? And they got 190 patients. It must be super expensive because, otherwise they'd have a lot more than 190. But there you go. Linda still works here. Is she got a picture of her here? Let's see. Nope. Doesn't look like it. But okay. Trusted by leaders in technology, biomedicine, and futurism. Yeah. Yes, Walt Disney there? Exactly. Jay actually said a little bit a while ago in the chat. I should have read this at the time. Inconceivable. Have you guys ever seen The Princess Bride? Go check it out. Anyway, there you go. Alcor, ALCOR. Extend your life with cryonics, and you can apply now. Let's just smash the apply now button and sign up. And it's super weird, right? Yeah, Matt's got it right. Only for the rich. Only for the rich. Yeah. This is real. Can you believe it? They've been at this for 50 years. They got 190, mostly dead, only mostly dead people frozen. And and so I looked into this a little bit, and this is crazy, right? Check this out. The membership benefits. Standby. Medical team at your bedside, ready to start the process upon legal death. They got cryopreservation, whole body or neurocryopreservation performed at our facilities. Long-term care patients are kept in secure long-term cryogenic DEWARS, DEWARS, at a consistent negative 196 degrees Celsius and possible revival, all with the goal of your revival and reintegration into society. Let's hope it's a post-scarcity world, because if you guys remember in Vanilla Sky, when they woke Tom Cruise back up, he was rich when they froze him, but he was not rich when they brought him back, because of course economics changed quite a bit. Everybody knows that with inflation running rampant. But yeah, this shit's real. This shit is actually real. So I thought it was interesting as I was digging into the rabbit hole tonight, as you guys know me. Yeah, it's real. 190 patients frozen in Arizona waiting for your application. Sick. Sick. What's up, Lazy Guy X? How much for just to freeze the head and the right leg, right? You're like, hey, can I get a discount? What if you do 12 stiffs? Do I get the 13th free? Is that how this works? Anyway, I like how we're hustling for deals here. There you go. We're about to finish this. Robert says cryonics too cold for me. Yeah, right. I agree. If you're into the Wim Hof stuff, the breathing exercises and the cold showers, I just can't do the cold showers. Oh God, no. Okay, let's get back to APOC, and then we got a James Tro to finish us out. APOC, you still there? Anything to add to that? You ready to line up for the cryonics situation?
That's why you invest in gold, Mike.
Is that why? So you can afford to freeze your ass when you die? Is that what this is?
Right. So you can afford to live after you get out. Right?
Oh, right. I see. Assuming they don't steal it from you while you're passed out.
True that. Well, Daryl reminded me of something, and that is I was going to mention earlier about the abduction scenario. So what if we are sort of being harvested for a bank like Noah's Ark?
Okay. Meaning that this is going out in the desert in Arizona with this company, or something different?
With the abduction, like the alien abduction scenario, apparently they take samples and eggs and all that. I mean, why wouldn't they be saving it for some sort of potential apocalypse that they know might happen, and they're going to revive a few people, maybe?
You mean all those alien abductions are actually friendly, and they're just trying to help us out with the Noah's Ark of the future? I see.
I've thought about that a lot. It's possible.
That's because you're a nerd.
I know. I think too much, but
nerd. I like it. I like the thought. Hey, you never know, right? You never know that this type of stuff is all up in the air, and that's why we talk about it, because MJ says we are being harvested. There you go. MJ agrees with you. So there you go. Plus one. Anything else for us, APOC, before we wind this out?
Nah. I think that's good.
Nah. All right, nerd. APOC, you're the best. All right, let's do it. Let's get the hell out of here. Please follow APOC, Jennifer, James, all the folks in the chat below. Robert, the Night Stalker, Tam Bam. Shout out to Tam Bam. I see you over there on Rockfin. So many great people that are part of this show. Please give them all a follow. Give them some love, and go say hi. Come join the Discord, troubledminds.org. Click the Discord link. Many of these folks are active on Discord, and like I said, they are much more friendly and kind than they seem on this show, because it's always kind of rushed in time frames, and I'm cutting people off. And trust me, when you give them a little bit of time and they're just themselves and not all little radio nerds, they're much finer folks than you expect. And not only that, they're super fine to begin with. So hey, it's like double plus good. Let's get the hell out of here. Smash the music button, and we got a James Tro for you, right? The James Tro, of course, is a modified version of the J Tro. And the J Tro, of course, is from Jay in New York. Where you been, buddy? I see you in the chat. We miss you, man. We miss you, man. Welcome back. I hope you're building the bricks, lifting the bricks, and it's treating your body well. Let's do it. Let's get the hell out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, James Salcedo of Salcedo Paranormal.
No matter how hard the past, you can always begin again. And that's apparently from Buddha.
The Buddha. Thank you, James. Appreciate it. Great stuff as always. You're the best. And yes, as we finish, it is Thursday night for Troubled Minds, so that means no Troubled Minds tomorrow, except for the news show. We'll do that at 3 p.m. Pacific time, and we're just doing our thing, talking about doing what we do. Hey, look, nobody tells us what to do. We do it because we want to do it. We talk about the things we want to talk about, and hopefully they're compelling and interesting, or at least some version of any of those things. And we're going to keep on trucking. As you know, the bad news is we're done. The good news is, God willing, we've got tomorrow. If you want to help the show, there are a number of ways. You can actually sub up on Twitch. You can sub up through Patreon and get exclusive content, the bonus shows on demand. You can also get Rockfin. Rockfin is a fantastic place. It's gonna kick YouTube's ass at some particular point. And for right now, well, it's not quite there yet. But come hop over to Rockfin, ROKFIN. Links in the description below. It's probably the best value if you want to help Troubled Minds and spend some money, because you get not just Troubled Minds, all the bonus content, but you also get, again, Sam Tripoli. You get there's so many other people. The Michael Tracy's over there. You get what's up, Jimmy Dord. You get Crow 777. You get Abby Martin, the Empire Files. You get lots of folks that are way more famous than me, but they're all over there on Rockfin, and one subscription gets you all of that. So that's probably the best value. If you want to help the show and don't want to spend money, obviously just spread the word. Just let people know, hey, look, there's a show going on. There's a conversation happening about all kinds of whack stuff, and this is why we do this. So there it is. And one more thing too, troubledfans.com. If we got merch going on, there's hats, there's shirts, there's stickers, there's a mouse pad, there's a patch that just went up, and there's more stuff coming every week. So you can do that. And at the very end, if you want to help and again don't want to spend money, spread the word, of course, but then also listen to the podcast feed. You listen to Spotify or iTunes or anywhere you get your podcasts, and there you go. It's as simple as that. It's monetized. Please let the commercials run. If you skip them, it skips them, but if you let them run, it's for 24 minutes you get 90 seconds of commercials. It's not terrible, so I appreciate that very much. Thanks for doing that. Put on an old episode while you're cooking dinner or something, and it does help. So please thank you so much for that, and let's get the hell out of here. As it ends, it goes exactly like this, because you know what? Nobody tells us what to say. Nobody tells us what to think. So I'm going to say this. Be sure, be strong, be true. Also, I'm going to be on James's show tomorrow night at Salcedo Paranormal. That will be at, 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern. And what's the topic, James? I can't even remember. What were we talking about?
Hollywood and the paranormal.
Hollywood and the paranormal. Hollyweird and the paranormal. So we'll be doing that tomorrow night. And thank you, James, for reminding me. I'm like a goldfish brain sometimes. And it goes like this. I already said the thing. Thank you for listening. From our troubled minds to yours, have a great night.